And we are back. Couch Company Podcast. I'm John. With me, as always, Tyler. Hi-ho. And with me sometimes, our main man, what killed him? We're still asking that question. Jeff.
I'm back, baby.
All right. That's the first one down for Jeff.
Jesus, I guess.
No. I'm not in this. I'm not doing this.
For those of you following along, Tyler needs to say a unique phrase every time. He went with, I think that's Mr. Pooh from South Park.
I never seen it.
I think you have, and I
Tally.
think you're lying.
Oh, it is Mr. Pooh.
Yeah, I think you're lying to me.
I mean, I don't watch South Park. I've seen him.
I think subconsciously
fair
you did it.
I've seen it.
And you know it.
Well, yeah, I
But
did
you're just
the
saying
thing,
you don't
but
know
I don't watch South Park.
I think you're afraid. I think, here's what I'm going to call it. This is a little Sherlock
All right,
Holmes
here we go.
right here. I
Yep.
think you had a traumatic experience when you were a child. You were watching South Park, and your
Okay.
mom got really mad at you. So now you just deny ever watching South Park because you were never allowed to watch it. Like, she probably walked in at one of the worst parts.
No, we didn't get it. I didn't have cable, so I couldn't watch South Park if I wanted to. I've seen occasional, I saw the Black Friday episode, I saw the World of Warcraft episode, both of those. I was just talking to Harbin about this. I think I actually prefer Family Guy to South Park, which I know.
Crazy.
I know.
I like Family Guy. Don't get me wrong.
I know.
But South Park's much better.
South Park is much more current, I think.
That's part of what the show is. It's
exactly.
satirical.
So
right.
Yeah, so I get it. I get the
South Park is
they're not as afraid.
I view South Park as more intelligent.
it's more intelligent, exactly. Family Guy is a great show if you want to turn your brain off and just it has some funny moments, right? But intellectually, if we're talking about comedy, it's like the most baseline. South Park has a whole episode on how fucking lazy Family Guy is. It's hilarious.
Yeah, well, where does Simpsons rank on that in terms of smartly written? Because some people would say that Simpsons is one of the smartest shows.
I'm kind of with you. I didn't really grow up with a lot of the mainstream, more adult comedy cartoons. We had cable, but it was like it's some kind of weird package. I don't even know how we got it. It might have been stolen for all I know. But I just remember it was a glorious day when we finally even got Cartoon Network. Like, that was all the talk of the town where I grew up. It's like, oh my God, can you believe we have Cartoon Network now? Because it used to just be like ABC Family, Nickelodeon, and maybe Fox, and that's, I think, what was Simpsons originally
53.
aired
I remember that.
Yeah.
I'm not too young for that.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't allowed to watch Simpsons. I wasn't allowed to do that. Even Family Guy, when it first came out, I kind of had to sneak that. I kind of had to sneak Adult Swim. And I think because it was on Cartoon Network, my parents were kind of disarmed by that a little bit. So I'm with you. Like, I don't really know much about The Simpsons. I like it. I know that I like the style. I like that everyone's yellow for the most part. For some reason, that draws me in. I like Bart's weird hair, and I think at most I respect The Simpsons much more than some of the further iterations, such as Futurama, Family Guy, this kind of style that developed. But I don't know. Can you speak to The Simpsons?
I think it's one of the most overrated shows of all time. I never laugh when I watch that show. I swear. And people look at me like I'm crazy. This is the most smartly written, highbrow. Maybe I'm a Neanderthal.
I think I might be too.
But I'm dude, this show's not fucking funny at all, bro.
Because we're throwing just everything to the wind here.
Maybe I'm too crass.
I think The Simpsons is the Seinfeld of the adult cartoon world.
My God. No way, dude. Seinfeld's so funny. I was literally just watching an episode the other day where it was the one where there's these carpet cleaners and they're like a cult. They try to convert, so they do your carpets for really cheap so they can get in your house and try to convert you to their religion, which is they're like carpet cleaners. But they come to George's apartment and they don't try to convert him, so he gets mad. So the whole episode spends him going there trying to get them to convert him. It's so funny, bro.
I don't know. Maybe I need to watch some Simpsons to get what's going on here.
I put them in the same category where I'll sit there, I'll be like, I could see the humor there, or it's in given time or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's if I put Seinfeld up against something like Curb, I just
see Curb's just more. I think
it's more modern.
I see it. It's more modern. It's more vulgar.
I don't even know about vulgar,
It's
but it
100%
does.
more vulgar.
It's not. I guess so.
It's got F-bombs. It's got.
That's fair.
Like you just couldn't. Like Seinfeld was limited by what they were doing, you know, at the time, and you know where they were broadcasting it. So,
dude, I
give it points for that because they're like handicapped by that, but it's still hilarious.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
This wasn't on our list of things to talk about at all, but that's my fault.
Knowing that Jeff's a Cartoon Network kid, like, really makes a lot of sense.
Who wasn't?
What do you mean?
Well, when I was growing up, I don't know if it was different for you guys.
I'm sure it was.
There was Cartoon Network kids, there was Nickelodeon kids, and there was Disney kids. So there was 3 factions, right?
And there were factions. I just
there
thought
were
it was
factions.
like
There were factions in my day.
Okay,
but like you literally had a team, and like that really defined kind of who you were. So the Cartoon Network kids were kind of like they're
edgy.
cool, they're edgy, they were kind of out there a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
The Disney kids were like super square and proper and
Christian kids.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like, well, and ABC Family Kids. So there's like kind of
and I will
umbrella.
I'll push back on that a little bit because you're obviously younger than Tyler and I. I think whenever I'm talking about like Cartoon Network coming to our town, it really was kind of the complete package. So where I grew up, it was Channel 40 was Disney Channel. Channel 39 was Cartoon Network. Channel 38 was ABC Family, and Channel 26 was Nickelodeon. That was the 4.
I'm trying to remember if that was the same for me.
And
might be.
You would watch the Disney movies.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the originals.
Of course.
You would watch maybe, and this kind of, I don't really remember the Nickelodeon shows outside of when I was super young. So like Doug, Rocco, those ones. But when I was kind of growing up with Cartoon Network, it kind of transitioned into like that Zoe 101 and iCarly era. And
that was Cartoon Network?
That was Nickelodeon.
Or that was Nickelodeon. So that's where I'm kind of like going back and forth on each one of these channels.
Yeah.
Whenever Cartoon Network came around, I was phasing out Nickelodeon and phasing out Disney. And then what really crushed me is Dragon Ball Z came to town. And before then it was, you know, Pokemon and Sailor Moon. And that was really like the morning before school, 5 a.m. at the babysitter's. I'm watching Sailor Moon and Pokemon. I didn't know what it was. There was like these weird, kind of naked, kind of not transformations going on with Sailor Moon, and like the Pokemon was dope. But then Dragon Ball Z came and changed everything. So Dragon Ball Z came, Gundam Wing came. There was not Adult Swim, but there was something
Toonami.
Sunday. Yeah, there was Toonami on Sunday.
That was Saturday nights. Well, when I was doing it.
Oh, it probably was different for
Maybe
you.
It was like a repeat.
Toonami was like crazy, dude.
Sunday.
Yeah. They had Dragon Ball Z, they had Naruto, but even before that, I don't know in your day, they had like Cowboy Bebop. Like they brought a lot of those shows to the West, and that's kind of when anime was being like really infused into Western culture.
But Cowboy Bebop is like fairly graphic.
That was
it was on at like 10 at night.
Yeah.
Oh,
it wasn't like a kid.
10 at night. Yeah, it makes sense.
Well,
sure.
Yeah, right.
But it was. I remember I played basketball because I was ginormous, and I remember like my parents going to bed. Like, Jeffrey, are you going to bed? Like that's how they sound in my head. And
crazy, mine too.
I'd be like, no, I gotta lift, mom. And I was like in 4th, 5th, 6th grade, like, and I was just curling. I wasn't
lifting in 4th grade.
Yeah, to play basketball.
That's crazy.
And that was my excuse to be able to stay up and watch these cartoons. That for my era, it wasn't Naruto. That was a little later on, but it was Cowboy Bebop, Inuyasha, Yu Yu Hakusho, a little bit of Dragon Ball Z, maybe like unedited. Like instead of it being edited, it was unedited, so you might get a curse word or a little bit more of like a arm cut off here and there, and that really defined. So you're talking about like the Cartoon Network kids. Like, sure, there was like Ed, Edd and Eddie. There was Courage the Cowardly Dog, Cat Dogs.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, look at the Cartoon Network styles. Like Ed, Edd and Eddie's on acid. Courage the Cowardly Dog is like, and they're great shows. Don't get me wrong, but that like. You can see how those types of, and then you have the Toonami. And then if you're one of those kids, you're like up at night, 2 a.m. somehow, parents went to bed, you know, they didn't see you sneaking on the television. You see Adult Swim, these crazy fucking sketches they have at like 2, 3 in the morning.
They were wild.
You just like, that'll change your life. I'll never forget the time I watched Too Many Cooks for the first time. And I was like, what is happening, bro? I thought it was like a fever dream. You ever seen that?
Yeah.
Yeah. You ever see
No.
Too Many Cooks?
No, I wasn't allowed.
I can't even describe it. You have to just watch it.
What year were you born?
97.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Too Many Cooks came out when like I was alive though.
You were alive.
Yeah. And then there was another one where, oh man, you'll have to help me out with this. Something about a bear. And it was so weird though. Fuck, I can't remember what it was.
And you have to realize that these are kind of like artistic styles, right? These are, and what I mean by that is, in Western animation, there aren't a lot of people doing it. All right, there's a couple of studios, mostly based in actually New York. Some of them have gone to California, but we're seeing this same kind of occurrence in animation and style with Adventure Time and these kind of like rubber band arm characters and everything soft edge. You see these different kind of animation styles not repeat, but usually there are years and years and years of this kind of evolved style, and that's where you get the Cartoon Network style, because the same people that are making Courage are making some of these other shows, even if they're the more adult shows. The same studios are animating the same cluster. So
right.
It really is an interesting thing to research. And one of my favorite podcasts, Sacred Symbols, one of the hosts is an animator. His name's Dagan Moriarty. He's amazing. He talks about his time in animation and everything that he's worked on, and it's like, if I have a crush on like a realistic person who I think lived such an amazing life in an art field, it's Dagan Moriarty. Like, his animation journey is so freaking cool. But yeah, this wasn't on the docket to talk about. So
No. But it's good. I like that perspective. Yeah, it is interesting. But even when you look across like those channels, right? Like the Cartoon Network style is very different than Nickelodeon.
I wasn't allowed to do Nickelodeon because it was more, I don't know how to say it, like real world based ish, and a little
like
bit
live
more
action.
A little bit more. It seemed like it was more like potty humor, body humor, like a little grosser,
like
just
SpongeBob. But that's after you, right?
Yeah, I was a little too old for SpongeBob. Is around then, but it was
what was like Cat Dog?
Hey
like
Arnold,
your Cat Dog, Hey
realistic.
Arnold, the
Rocket Power,
Recess,
Recess.
Who were the kids? The
Rugrats.
Rugrats.
Yeah, like Rugrats. I wasn't allowed. Like anything
Rugrats
that was
kind
like
of weird in general.
anything that was like my mom could look at and be like, "Oh, Rugrats. Here's a lot of kids. Oh, this who's the oldest daughter or whatever?
Jessica.
Sure, whoever.
Angelica.
I think it's Angelica.
Yeah,
But it's like,
yeah.
oh, that's around my kid's age. Oh, she's being a jerk to everybody and being terrible to everybody. And she's like, so my mom was just like, no, absolutely not, type of thing.
That's how my mom was too,
Yeah.
with everything, dude.
Yeah.
I still remember when I was watching Suits when it came out. So I was like a teenager or maybe a little bit younger.
I hate everything, but go on.
When did it come out? Like 2010?
I don't know.
I was like 13.
Oh,
maybe?
yeah, because that's when Mass Effect came out.
Yeah, it is. I was like 13 maybe.
Sure.
But they're all like dicks to each other, you know? So my mom's just like, well, my mom will always say two things. One, why are they so mean to each other? Being so mean, blah, blah, blah. And she like hates the show.
Yeah.
And then two, it's like, they would never wear that. They have like all these super nice dresses on in the show, like the women. They're like, that is not business professional. Blah, blah, blah. She all just goes off on what every woman's like wearing on every show. It's like the funniest thing.
My mom always looks at it from a lens of like, I can't believe they do that in public, or I can't believe that they're swearing in public, doing anything in public. Like, did I tell you about the spoon story? I think I told you about the spoon story. Did I tell you about the spoon story from Eden Park? We were talking, and it's just this very innocent conversation with my poor mother. But somehow, like, we're sitting in Eden Park, and we had a spoon, and at some point or other, like, we said, oh, our friend Emily, she can take an Eden Park spoon and like put it all the way into her mouth, right?
Oh,
so yeah. So I think it's just me. It's probably me, Chelsea, and like my parents or something. We were sitting there and we mentioned this, and it just I forget how it came up, and then just out of nowhere, my mom's like, "Well, I bet she's popular at parties." And we all like looked at her like, "What are you like?" Even my dad, like, because he knew, but he was just like, "What are you talking about?" And in my poor innocent mother's mind, it's just like, That's an extremely rude thing. You shouldn't shove silverware down your throat.
It's like a party trick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she's like that's rude. Like, you shouldn't do that. That's gross. Like, who would want to touch that after it's been down your throat?
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's where my mom is, right? Like, just completely
naive.
pure and just, but also anything outside of, like, I don't know, insert Christian show here is not great. Like, Hallmark Channel only, right? Like, that kind of thing. There's so many, like, I think she would truly love Ted Lasso, but she'll get 5 minutes in before Jamie goes down on Keely, or like, just something to be like, is he tying your shoe?
There's
like,
enough,
what's going on?
in there,
yeah, there's just well, I mean, look at, like, Roy Kent dropping 12 F-bombs, which is literally his character and why he's so funny. But, like, my mom, you just hear, just like constantly just sucking her teeth and being like, that's so rude.
I like that.
Yeah. I love her, but yeah, I feel like she misses
What
a
does
lot
she
of,
like to watch? Passion of the Christ?
No, like, literally Hallmark Channel stuff.
My mom loves Hallmark Channel movies. And I will say, dude, they're kind of addicting.
No, dude, don't go there.
The problem is I'll come in to my mom's room.
But because I like Family Guy, that's so bad.
I don't like them. I'm just saying, I'll come to my mom's room and to talk to my mom because I love my mom and I like talking to her. Mm-hmm. And so I talk to her and she'll have it on. And I'm like, oh, this is so fucking dumb, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, you say that? Just straight to her face? Hey, Mom, this is so fucking dumb.
No, I don't say that.
It's one of the first times I ever swore on a podcast, but continue.
Yeah, you don't rarely.
I'm going to have to bleep that because that's such a bad...
What?
It's a bad use. I feel like if I swear I need... Anyway, continue. Go on.
Should we be trying not to swear?
Oh, absolutely not. That's just my shtick.
Okay. Oh,
he tries to make me look bad by being pure.
So I can come in and ruin everything.
I just think that one day my mom will... Well, I'm always worried that my mom's going to listen to this just randomly. And of course she'd pick this episode out of all of them if that ever were to happen.
Yeah.
So you... And what did you see?
So it'll be on the TV and I'm like, I'm talking to her and I'm like, this is so dumb. Like, the acting's terrible, blah, blah, blah. And... there's also like a Hallmark bingo card that someone made where it's like, oh, girl has corporate job. Oh, she's going back to small town. Oh, man, love interest is
changes
carpenter
her tire or whatever. Yeah,
construction workers, works with this. It's like literally there is a written formula.
Isn't impressed by her.
She's usually a dick to him, and then he's like, oh man, I really like she's spunky or something. Like,
well,
no guys. Well, maybe not no guy. I'm not like that. I know. Like, if a girl's an asshole to me, I'm like, fuck you, dude. Yeah. I do not like you at all.
Well, and I'm sorry if there's any moms that stumble upon this episode. Happy Mother's Day. It was a couple weeks ago.
That's our number one episode. Do you know that?
That's a good.
We love moms on this show.
Yeah, moms are great. And I'm coming. My next comment is coming from a place where I also have a mother who religiously watches the Hallmark Channel. I am convinced that Hallmark movies are softcore porn for anyone 50 and over. That is my...
What?
These are beautiful people, older people, coming together, sharing usually over-the-top emotions in a very short amount of time in a hometown.
Yeah.
And if you ever watch your parents go through a Hallmark movie, like, instead of watching the movie, just look at them. Look what they're going through. They're going through an entire journey with these people, and it usually results in tears at the end because they're either so happy or so sad. And I think there is an emotional climax at the end for these people.
What's one step beyond? So you have your hardcore porn, your normal porn, your softcore.
Yeah.
What's one step beyond? Because I feel like
beyond Hallmark.
Yeah. Well, no. Like, so is it like is that the tears?
There's like actual softcore porn.
Right. But then there's
you're talking if we dumb it down to TV.
Yeah, what's tamer than softcore porn?
I'll tell you. I got.
Right, what's tamer?
Yeah, like what's the
I don't know about tamer, but I know what normal porn would be in relation, and it's a movie called Blended with Adam Sandler and I can't remember her name. She's in like every Sandler movie. It's always the romanceable woman. God, why can I not remember? Drew Barrymore.
Not who I thought you were going to say, but okay.
That is the equivalent to normal porn for anyone 50 and above.
Interesting.
Are we talking like emotional porn?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
My mom does not watch Hallmark. She like doesn't even pay attention to them. She just has them on.
Sure.
Because I don't think like
when you're in the room,
when you have that, right? Maybe no. My mom is pure as snow, but like when you have a person with that worldview, right?
Yeah.
it limits you so much of what you could watch. You know what I mean? Like, you can't. Although I will say, my mom loves the Mission Impossible movies.
That's not what.
That is so weird. That's
she
so
loves
weird.
those movies, dude. She's like, oh, just like she will watch them on repeat.
You went to see the last one with her? Or am I making that up in my head?
There's a new one coming out.
Yeah.
Next year or this year?
It's like this. It's the second part of the one that just came out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I circled that. I'm gonna take her to the movie where she loves those movies.
So that's hard. That's the hardcore porn, by the way. Just now.
Yeah, that's like that's the. I guess
Tom
that's
Cruise.
like
Tom Cruise is busting his kneecaps on the.
So you're gonna go watch this with your mom now.
Dude,
I love it how John's like,
why are you trying to ruin my life, bro?
My mom is as pure as the driven snow. Meanwhile, it's like, you exist, right? Like there's something there.
Yeah, the stork dropped me off at the house.
Yeah, sure.
What are you talking about, bro?
I keep forgetting about this stork.
I guess she had to be brave enough to make that phone call, but
I do think there is something interesting about not actually adult entertainment, but as you grow older, like it's very difficult to recommend a modern show to your adults. Like I could never recommend Game of Thrones. I could never recommend some of these I couldn't even recommend Breaking Bad to like my dad, and he's kind of probably more open minded. So there is like an interesting like, what do people watch without being
dad is
insulted or offended by modern entertainment?
Right. My dad is just so different though. Like he doesn't get
he doesn't care.
He'll watch Scarface, he'll watch whatever. Like he likes that. We always bond when like Godfather comes on. We'll always watch that all the way through. But he loves reality TV, which is like if you knew this guy, shocking.
Yeah.
You would never peg him for reality. He likes Big Brother, he likes like Survivor, he watches all that shit. I'm just like, what the fuck, dude? And good for him, dude. That's like his guilty pleasure. Good for him. That's his hardcore. He loves that shit. I don't know what it is.
I was 8 years old in Florida. We visited my aunt, and that was the first night that Big Brother was on, and we just watched it like just consecutively.
You and your parents?
My parents, my aunt, my uncle, like everybody.
How was your mom okay with that show?
Because my aunt put it on. I don't know.
Oh, that's the cheat code. That's the cheat code.
I don't know.
That's the cheat
code.
But
it was that, and then I remember telling my parents that a show called Survivor is coming on, and they didn't believe me, and then they came on. That was actually we are way off topic. When I went to Christian school, we had like a newsletter. I think came out like once a week, but it was just this like I think it was called God's World, and they talked about Survivor somehow. Like I don't know why. But it was like
Sleeping the Nation, dude. But
we were talking about it, and it's just like my mom they didn't believe me. And then it came out, and I don't know. Anyway,
that's strange.
It's super weird, and I'm probably fudging details because it's
trying to
long ago. But
picture the woman who banned All Dogs Go to Heaven in her house.
She didn't ban it. She didn't ban it. I had to verbally confirm.
There's a consent
There were two
form.
things.
That's
One,
right.
I had to verbally confirm that. I believe that animals do not have souls, and this is a fake movie, and dogs do not go to heaven.
God.
And the second one was Pocahontas, that I had to verbally confirm that I do not believe that every rock, tree, and creature has a life, spirit, and name.
Oh my God.
And then I could go in and watch Pocahontas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy, bro.
Those were the two.
I really hope
the
your
two
mom
that
listens
stick out
to
to me.
this episode.
It's not bad. There's
nothing against that.
She is.
Although I
pure.
disagree
Yeah.
respectfully.
Well, hey, yeah, I don't know.
Dogs are too happy not to have souls.
I don't know,
like
man.
when I think of a soulless creature, I think of something that's like not happy. You know.
Oof. Well, we could get into that, but yeah, sure.
Like cubicle workers. Are
I think it's the idea
right?
that the reason why humans are what sets humans apart from the rest of the animal kingdom is the soul. Is I think where she was coming from there. Not to be all theological on that.
I can see that. I think it's just like higher level thinking, right? That separates us. I think I don't know. I think any living creature has an innate value and a soul. And
well, it's not about value. I think values there. It's just
clearly not. Clearly not. If you don't have a soul, if you don't have a soul and you're not going to heaven, you're not as valuable as someone who does. Wouldn't you say?
Well, I guess it depends on how you rate value. If you're saying value is purely based off of like whether you go to heaven or not, then yeah, I guess not. But
I think a lot of people would say that.
Yeah,
heaven's supposed to be like a utopian perfect.
But what I'm saying is like value to who, right? So like I would say like dogs provide immense value to millions and millions of people, either as support or, companionship or comfort or hunting or whatever, like a million different things. But I don't know.
I like dogs.
Yeah, I like dogs too.
Do you though?
I'd never get
I think
one.
you're a fake dog person.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're.
Who's going to get on? No one's going to live. I hate dogs.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
I've heard it before. I've heard it before.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like people are much more comfortable saying I hate cats than I hate dogs.
I think it's more acceptable.
Which is crazy.
What are you talking about? Cats are dicks.
Cats are just as lovable as
No,
dogs.
they're not.
If you get the right cat, man. Here's the thing.
Say that again.
Let me
say that again.
If you get the right cat, if you get the right dog, it's no different.
No, it's not. Every dog is lovable. Almost. Like 99%. Yes.
I don't know.
Dude. Okay, more dogs are lovable than more like cats. Cats are so mean,
I think
dude.
that's just that's your years and years of
no. The problem is cats are like nice 25% of the time, like when they want to be, and then you're in a toxic relationship with your cat.
No,
they string you along. They're mean to you. They're mean to you. They're mean to you, and then they'll be nice to you one time because you start thinking like, man, I really hate my cats, and then they snuggle up to you that one time. You're like, this is why I have a cat.
Exactly.
That's called a completely toxic relationship.
No.
Yes, dude. If you treat them like shit. And then you keep them stringing along because you do that nice, you apologize, you do that nice thing right at the end just to keep them in.
No, if your cat was just nice to you 24/7, then it just becomes meaningless. But if they just treat you all offstandishly, whenever they snuggle up with
You've never had a dog.
Oh, it's pretty.
You've never had a dog, clearly.
I would never want a dog.
You've never had a dog, and it's clear. It's okay, dude.
I like other people's dogs sometimes.
Dude, coming home from a hard day's work, your dog comes up, wagging their tail, just so happy to see you every day.
Yeah.
After everyone else in the world shits on you.
You know what I hear?
This dog is happy with you and loves you unconditionally no matter what.
Here's a different opinion.
Uh-oh.
Coming home from a hard day's work.
Yeah.
Gotta take care of this freaking dog now.
Such an asshole. You're such an asshole.
You come home from a hard day's of work and the cat's like, hey, sup. And you say, hey, sup. And then you're good. You know what I mean? Hey, you shit today? Okay, it's fixed up. Yeah, I'm swearing today on the podcast. But it's like, okay, and then they cover it up. Not, all right, let's go out and I got to clean up after you.
Dude, dogs are awesome, bro. They're the best.
I don't discount that. I'm gonna poo-poo dogs. I'm just saying
you're poo-pooing
dogs. Not for me.
It's not for you.
I have a decade where Chelsea can't ask me for a dog, and then we got to revisit the conversation.
I can't wait till Penny grows up a little bit, and I make her the biggest dog person in the world.
That's fine.
I'm gonna bring a puppy over.
Yeah.
She's going to fall in love with that puppy. Yeah. I'm going to say, this could be your puppy. You just got to convince your dad.
I'm going to have to break her podcast over. It's just like I lock him. I change the code. You can't get in. It's like
that's when I'll know. That's when I know you've had enough. You want to weigh in on that, Jeff? You a dog person?
You
like both equally?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the in-between. I come from a family of pets, but my family has a very firm policy of we try to stay away from pets because we get so connected. So in my family, we had a dog growing up and we get so connected to these animals, whether they're a dog or a cat, that when they eventually do pass, it is really dramatic for the entire family. So I come from a family who absolutely loves both. And right now we have a cat and he's getting into his later years. And when he passes away, it is going to be a bad couple of years, like for everyone. It's like a very dramatic moment for everyone involved for some reason because of how interconnected we get with these animals. We're very big animal lovers. So we actually actively stay away from the harm of when they pass. It's kind of like a dark take, but we really struggle. We're not those people that can continuously get animals because the stress and the sadness that comes with the passing is so overwhelming. So
completely understand.
Yeah. So I love both. The cat that we currently have now, it's really, really difficult for me to imagine a day without him. He is baller. Like he's so cool. And you're talking about like cats being dicks. This cat is not a dick at all. This cat is awesome. And he's so like, he has this huge personality, even though he doesn't talk. And our dog was the same way. And I used to dog sit. By the way, if I watch any of your dogs that any of the listeners that are listening to this, and I'm retired from dog sitting, just so you know, I'm sorry this is the first time you're hearing it, but I'm not watching any more dogs this year. So,
wow.
But
breaking news.
I am out of the dog watching business officially. But I love my friends' dogs, and I get very attached to them even. And I kind of have to take a step back because, they're not even mine. And whenever they pass, it's like, no, like, so pets are just, you're talking about a pet not having a soul. I'm already torn on the whole, if there is such a thing as a soul thing. And going through, sorry, moms and the people listening, I went to 15 years of Catholic education. If all the Bible stuff is real, heaven doesn't sound like that great of a place to me. I'm just going to be honest with you.
Oh, man.
So when I die, and if I don't see my animals or like whatever the afterlife is, I'm going to be pretty upset. So that's kind of where I fall into like the animal soul afterlife thing is like, I hope they're there.
That's why I think they have a soul. They're going to be
Justin
there.
really wants to be on that podcast when we talk about that stuff.
Justin?
Yeah. So maybe we do a 4. Get like 2
talk
ends of
about
the
heaven
spectrum.
stuff.
Yeah.
I'd be interested on his opinion.
The thing that worries me, and we can't get down this path, but the thing that worries me with the heaven thing is, and I've heard this argument made where it's like, yeah, but when you get to heaven, your mind's gonna be so expanded that you're gonna realize like what matters, what doesn't. Not in those words per se, but like it's gonna be a completely different. Like you're above the mortal realm of thinking and stuff. Mm-hmm. And part of it's like, oh yeah, but like. Is that
good?
Coveted? I guess like you don't have a choice, I guess, but yeah,
right, yeah. That's how I was.
It's a little sneak peek.
That's my thought about it too. Is like we probably can't comprehend it.
You can't,
right?
But
so who's the like all the conjecture we have about it is like probably just pointless.
Yeah,
who knows?
But we're gonna do an episode on it, so whatever that comes.
Dude,
down,
I don't even know what
I
I think anymore, man. It's just like weird. I kind of try to live day by day now.
Yeah,
I try not to think. Yeah, I try not to like think. Although you can't help yourself thinking about. As I get older, I do start. I've had this thought recently where it's like, man, when I was like a kid, I never thought about like dying or anything like that. Like, when did that start creeping into my head? You know what I mean? Because like these days, I'm like, fuck, I'm literally gonna die one day. It's inevitable, probably, and there's nothing I can do about it. And what happens? Like, that's just, everyone has that thought, and it's like, when did that creep into my head, man? I used to just be turning on Cartoon Network, like what's Goku up to, and now I'm thinking about that. It's so weird. Like in that world, they can just wish each other back with the Dragon Balls like 1,000 times. So it's like maybe that's what happens.
Having a kid makes you really start to be like, oh man, okay, so she's
it
gonna
gets
be
worse.
20.
Oh
my gosh, I'm like on my way out. Yeah, it's not great.
And it's probably worse because you're not even thinking about yourself anymore. You're like, dude, I have to stay alive now for her, which is like,
sure.
Okay, maybe not.
Not yet, but yeah.
Not yet?
Yeah. Well,
don't you think... I hear that, like, dads are like... And this is all secondhand, obviously, because I don't have a kid. But dads are like, well, now I have to stay alive because who's going to take care of her, right?
Yeah, it's more of, like, I need to, like, get in better shape and that sort of thing. Because, like, I mean, right now I feel like I have a little wiggle room because she can't go anywhere. But, like, whenever she can start, like, running around and I can't keep up or something, that's going to be a problem. So it's like bare minimum, I just need to stay like with her. Is where I'm at right now. Who knows? We'll see.
You gonna go to the gym?
I don't know. I mean, I could just keep picking her up and putting her down. It's just
he's getting his dad's strength, dude. I was asking him.
My shoulders are like I can just hold her now like indefinitely, and it's fine. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. And she gets heavier and heavier. So.
I'm telling you, cinder blocks.
We mentioned that the other day or the other podcast. Yeah.
It feels so good, and you'll be the talk of the town. You can walk around here. You could meet the neighbors. You could be the cinder block guy. Yeah. It is a good place to be. Let me tell you.
Being a cinder block guy is probably like a respectable position.
It's not, but it's cool. It feels cool. It feels but badass. It's not.
That's funny.
It's not respectable, but it feels good.
I feel like almost imposter syndrome around here because in my mind I was like, okay. I'm in this neighborhood. We're younger. I feel like most of it's like kind of like older people and stuff. And I'm just like, oh, the old soccer moms and stuff. But like, we're the same age, you know? And like all of them kind of have their stuff together. They've had kids where like they're like, we're like kind of behind the curve, I think, of the general, I don't know, development, like the housing development.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's weird.
I actually think so. This is something I think I've mentioned this before, but a lot of people disagree with me on this. Mainly my brother. So my brother's a big proponent of like my parents had us when they were older, kind of like you, probably around the same age,
for sure.
And he doesn't like that. I actually am a big fan of that because we had a lot more opportunities because our parents were further along in their lifespan and more developed and financially stable and things of that nature. Also, on like from their perspective, it's like they got to spend a lot of time with just each other. They took a lot of trips. They were able to create a lot of memories and experiences. Like I personally would want to be more like that than like rush into kids. And kids are amazing, but like that's your sole focus at that point,
how old's
right?
your dad?
He's 65.
You're 10 years, yeah. So it's close. So my dad's turning 80 in February, but we're about 10-year difference. So that would be
How
around
old
the
are
same.
you?
35.
Okay, so we're 8 years difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
around
So
then.
your parents had you guys older
Yeah.
as well? Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, he's, 80? So he's...
Which is actually like kind of not the norm with like very Christian people. Usually they have them really young, which is I think is a huge mistake.
Too into the private, they tried. They couldn't. They were at. So I found out that they were actually in the process of adopting.
Really?
Yeah. Whenever
Wow.
they're like, "Oh, hey, I'm pregnant," it's like, "Oh, okay."
Wow.
Yeah. So that would have been something.
That would have been something.
Yeah.
Anyway.
What's on our list of things to talk about?
Yeah,
today?
you want to mention something first. We're only 30 minutes in?
I feel like jumping from. So I do want to talk about Star Citizen because I got angry. So I get like 3 emails from Star Citizen like a week of just like different like here's the news chronicle of this and stuff. So our millions of dollars going well spent. But they sent me an email talking about the Argo MPUV tractor, and essentially they're marketing it as like a nimble, faster hauling ship. Okay, so for people who don't know, you know about Star Citizen. Right?
Yeah.
Are you bought into Star Citizen?
I'll let you finish your thought, and
Okay.
I'll give you my...
So for years now, they've been selling all of these not tractor, but like cargo ships and like hauler ships and stuff like that. And now it's been so long since they started this game that they've come full circle, and now they're selling ships where in the marketing of the ship is like, this will run circles around the other one. And so it's like, what if you bought one of those other ships? Of like, it's been so long, you don't have a game, and now it's like an actual, like, if spaceships were real or like cars or something, we've come full circle where it's like now the new stuff is already outdating like the old stuff that you never actually got a chance to use in the first place. Anyway, it pissed me off.
Star Citizen is one of the, for me, it's up there with Titan, right? So when Blizzard announced that they were trying to make a new MMO, they codenamed it Titan. And that was kind of everyone's hope of the next generation of MMOs. Everyone was very optimistic. Eventually got canceled. I think Star Citizen replaced that for me, where Star Citizen felt like the new frontier of gaming for me in an MMO space. I, in the same breath, cannot do early access. I cannot do these. I cannot buy into an incomplete game. So I never bought into it. This Star Citizen for me was supposed to be the game that I built a new PC for because this looks so cool. This feels so amazing. Everything that they're saying on Kickstarter, it looks superb. But I never got to that point. I never even got to the point of buying the ship. And what you're getting at is I feel like my cousin, who has graduated college for 2 years now, he's been out of college. When he was just getting into college, he was trying to convince me to buy a ship. Mm-hmm. He was trying to meet whatever the pre-order on Kickstarter was. You got this ship. He's like, no, you don't understand. It's like $70. You get this ship. You should get this ship now. And I was like, nah, you don't understand. I can't play the game until it's out. Like, I haven't built a new PC. So what you're saying like really hits home for me of like, dang, they're still slinging ships.
Dude, they're slinging ships. There's a med like they're talking about like cars now. Like there's like a little Humvee that you can buy, and it's like keep your troops in the fight and blah blah blah. And it's just like now they've kind of graduated from like the individual people, and now it seems like a lot of the marketing is to like clans and guilds and things like, because like people like the whole galaxy, like virtual galaxy of art has already been divvied out, divided. Like it's already in sections of like, okay, well, like I'm getting recruited by this guy and this guy and this guy. It's like this whole like kind of like metagame weird thing happening. They're like, whenever you actually get into the game, who knows if any of that will stick or is real or what. And it's just like, man. And I guess the one, it's not really cool. It's kind of like an embarrassment now, but like every time they hit a new milestone, like I get those rewards because I bought in like pretty early. Like that's my first apartment. Like that's when I met you. So it's just like,
that's crazy.
It's a long time.
It's a long time.
Yeah. But yeah, the ship that I bought, which was I think it was the Freelancer, which was basically like, hey, you want to be Han Solo? Like this isn't a super fancy whatever ship, but like you can smuggle things and you can kind of hit in a fight and whatever. Yeah, now that's like hot trash. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, like my fleet has like 20 of those. We just use them for scrap. Like, okay.
Why would they ever release the game if they're just getting paid?
I don't know,
to
man.
do this.
Yeah. I mean, you like
just think about it.
People are playing the game, and the thing that I don't understand is when I'm watching like people play it, it looks like a game. And then I download the client and I'm like, okay, I guess it's my, bi-monthly check-in or every 6-month check-in or whatever. And like I turn it on and it like just I have a $5,000 machine. Like, yeah, it doesn't have the newest graphics card, but it's like the one step down. Like it can't run it. Like it cannot run it. There's no aliasing. Like you thought Starfield was bad with some of the things missing. This game's 10 times worse, but people are playing it. I'm like, where is that game? Like, what am I missing? I don't know. But I will say, because I mean, you're all about immersion, and you love cyberpunk too.
Did I ever? Yeah. I think John and I are definitely on the same page.
Cyberpunk is like the least immersive game compared to Star Citizen.
Oh, I see where you're going.
Really?
Just the level of detail. Like, I'm talking immersion. I'm not saying Star Citizen is a good game or even the choices they make are good choices.
When's the last time you played Cyberpunk, though?
Whenever, technically I started whenever they did the 2.0 update or whatever.
Sure.
I didn't go a lot into it.
No, you're good.
When I'm saying immersion, I'm talking like it's obviously first person and everything, but like everything is in game. Like there's not a menu. There's not like you like at least with like Cyberpunk, you I'm going to do my Cyberpunk thing, and it pulls up a menu. You can pick your things and stuff like that.
Yeah, okay.
This is all in. You're pulling up your arm pad. You're doing this like
very VR-esque, right?
Yeah. If you want to go into an elevator, you're not just go into the elevator and hit up. It's go into the elevator, hit the control panel. Now pick the floor that you want. Now go here, and like it's not like holding your hand and telling you. It's just like, okay, you're in Docking Bay 94. Which is a little Star Wars reference, right? Anyway, Docking Bay 94. But then you just got to find it. Like it's like you're just in that world. Figure it out, man. So it's like it strips a level of like game UI from like a Cyberpunk. And it's apples and oranges. But what I'm saying is like the level of immersion, the level of detail. Like if you're just speaking, if we're just talking in the game, like your mouth is moving in game. The loudness of you in game is based off of the distance between you and another person. Like that stuff's wild. But like, the fact that they keep like changing engines and postponing and pushing it just for like little things like that. Like, at what point is it like too much? Like you're saying, like, oh, it's the promised land of like. I was right there with you. Like I'm like, this is it. This is the last game I'm going to buy because like I'll just live in space, and it's just not good. I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like people are continuously buying these things they're putting out, so they're making money.
Yeah.
The second they put this game out, and it's not as good as everyone thought it was going to be because they've hyped it up in their heads so much. No, everyone's going to stop buying stuff. It's that promise of what it could be is what's keeping everyone in.
But when you're invested that much, it's like buying a new car, right? You buy a new car, you do your research, and you buy it. Then you have to convince everyone why what you bought was a good purchase. Sure. So it's like, oh, you bought the new Ford or whatever. It's like, it's American made. It's like, okay, whatever. Like this car is bad. Like it. People have to justify why they spent that much money, or people have. And I think that at some point too, you have these people that are building these clans and creating these kind of, I don't know, congregations of nerds, if you will, right? Like where it's just like they're leading a group of people. Like that's like a pretty big power trip. So even if the game's bad, hey, you're still king of clan here or whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's what I felt on League, where I had to. They came out with like the Vanguard update. You had to install Vanguard to play League of Legends.
Yeah.
So Vanguard's like the anti-cheat software that they used on Valorant. For any of those listeners who aren't aware, I was super opposed to this because the problem with it is it has like pretty significant access to your computer to ensure that you don't have anything installed to help you cheat. And I don't like that.
What do you got to hide?
Everything.
All right, continue.
Anyway, so I was like, oh man, I really don't want to do this. But the problem is I've been playing League for almost 10 years now, almost a decade. And I have hundreds of dollars put into that game. Like there's no chance I can just stop playing. So like I'm too in to stop. They could make me do anything at this point.
Well, Jeff, you said you would just like, hey, okay, give me all my money back and I'll just never play League again.
Yeah, if when they proposed that, if they would have said, here's all of your skin purchase, money back in this one bill or this one lump sum, I would have quit. It would have been a very no-brainer for me. But like you're saying, the investment.
Yeah.
And this is kind of off of other things that Riot, I felt like has been letting me down a little bit in terms of League in general. That is a game that I do have so much invested in, and it's almost like a connection piece with a lot of friends that don't live around here. Like I play with a friend in California, I play with a friend in New York, and it is kind of like a social gathering hub for us. But we all were of the same mind of, man, like if we could have got our money back, if that was an option, and just said, hey, we're not going to install Vanguard, we probably would have done that. Now I'm a little bit of a different story because I did install it for Valorant, so it was already on my system. It wasn't as big of a leap for me. But if I had that option, I definitely would have taken it. Just one, because I think League of Legends, I think my life probably would be better without it in my life because it is such of a problem. And that just speaks to how good of a game it is. This isn't like, it's not a knock at League. It's just, this is a game that is so present in my life and has been for like the last 10 years that even if you try to step away for a little bit, you might step away for a season or maybe a couple months and you end up congregating back to it. So if we go back to Star Citizen, I think that I think Star Citizen is in a really precarious situation. I don't even know I can't remember who the developer is, but I think they're in a situation where because of the promises made, because of every new goal they put up, because of every system that they are trying to shove in this game, their development costs are just never ending. I can't imagine. Obviously, this money is just continues to get pumped back into this game. I think if it does release, it would be phenomenal. I think they could monetize it way more than they are now. I think they want to get this game out. I just don't think that they have clear management on how to get it out. That is how I perceive Star Citizen, because what is this, a 11-year dev cycle? I don't even know what the dev cycle is.
I mean, it's got to be longer than that.
That's crazy, bro.
That's
crazy.
That's significant. You have to imagine half the people that were working on the game at the beginning aren't there anymore. Like, you're not even going to retain the original team. So I just think Star Citizen's in a little bit of a tough spot. I hope it releases someday, and I hope it's somewhat successful. I'll probably get it, or maybe I won't, depending on the reviews. But I don't think it's as cynical as just, why would we release because we're still making money. I think they want to release so that they can extrapolate more from a player base or get away from this reward system where they're constantly having to promise new incentives to Kickstarter and have a proper store of cosmetics and things like that.
Well, that terrifies me too. Is like, that's what I don't see that game being able to function without people. Like you're buying into it. Like it's by definition pay to win. Right? I could buy a bigger ship with more guns. Bad? It has to be, because you're literally buying in these ships. Okay, well, if I spend $100 and I get a freelancer, and you spend $200 and you get a cruiser, oh, you got more guns. Like, what are you gonna do? So it's just, it really depends. It was 2012 that got the crowdfunding for it. I was trying to see like here. Let me just Google this.
That's a long time ago, man.
Yeah, it's minimum of like 13 years because they probably had to develop marketing materials, launch trailer, proof of concept for the Kickstarter project.
So they were crowdfunded for $2 million, a little over $2 million. To date, well, as of April 2024, they are over $676 million is what they have raised for that game.
What's the GTA 6 budget? Like, what is it?
I think was it 600 million?
That's what I'm getting at. Is because
that game's coming out though.
That's what I'm saying.
It's coming out next year.
I'm excited for that game, dude.
Who isn't?
I don't know why.
It's rumored fall next year.
Tyler's not excited.
I'm excited.
You asked me, you're not excited.
Oh no! This is $2 billion. That can't be right.
See, no, I think it is.
Yeah,
right.
with GTA 6's estimated budget.
$2 billion? Yeah. I thought it was in the bill. I thought it was in the bills.
Why did I think 60 million? I don't know. Anyway,
probably because no other game gets anywhere close to either Star Citizen or GTA.
Will be the greatest game of all time. Just based.
They have the. Here's your track record.
It's just, dude. It's just like gaming for everybody. It is video games. Like, I just remember clearly playing Grand Theft Auto San Andreas at my cousin's house.
Yeah.
And I thought he was the coolest dude ever because I was not allowed to play Grand Theft Auto back then.
Do you think it's going to be... Well, this is probably too early to speculate. I think the GTA 6 is going to be very heavily focused on, like, do we all play it together? I assume we would, in which case then I would be into it. Like, I think that's kind of the missing piece there is, like, that's why, like, 5 really never stuck with me is, like, we would dabble in online, but no one actually like played it like a Call of Duty or like a Battlefield or Battlefront or whatever. So
I'm excited for the single player personally. I mean, that's why I play GTA.
Yeah.
I never got really into the online in GTA 5. So I mean, it's a good opportunity because GTA 5 is very intimidating to get it involved because there's so much stuff now that I never really got into the online aspect of it. So this would be like a fresh start. So I'd be willing to try.
I don't know. What about you? You love the Grand Theft Autos, right, Jeff?
No.
Oh, okay.
But
see, I knew we brought him on.
He just played.
So I was in the boat where I wasn't allowed it. For me, GTA was it was San Andreas. It was 3. It was going over to a friend's house and just having fun, spawning all the tanks, like just doing. It was just on the TV. It wasn't as huge for me. GTA 4, which is a wild departure from 3 and even 5, it's kind of like the middle child. I couldn't get into Liberty City. It wasn't really there, but somebody paid for me and said, you are playing GTA 5 because on stream, I had this incentive. You donate the most money, you pick the game. Someone picked GTA 5 and I was dreading it. I was like, oh God, like I knew this is a good game. I tried playing it 2 or 3 times. It never stuck. I was like, well, now I have to. And once it stuck, it stuck. And the only thing that disappointed me is like I wanted to play it the way I wanted to play. Like I wanted to obey traffic laws. I didn't want to speed. And the viewers got mad, which they're like, oh, you're supposed to do that. I'm like, whatever. But I'm very excited for GTA 6. I just, off of John saying the single player, I love the single player. If I were to get into a GTA online kind of situation, it would kind of be into this, it would be this role playing avenue that the online is taking where people are role playing, the Best Buy clerk. And you sit there and you wait for another online person to come into your store. And you say, thank you for coming to Best Buy. How can I help you? Like, that is what I would want.
And then we all get together after our shifts at the bar.
I did that for Star Wars. That was straight up Star Wars Galaxies. Yeah. Which I told you about. So it's like, that's been around. Like, I enjoy that bit of it. I don't know.
The roleplay servers are fun. Also, the mods are awesome, too. Like, I can't wait. Because, like, when I play GTA 5, I have all the cars are real-life cars. They all have the correct badging and everything. Ooh. All the clothes are real. Like I got my Nikes on. I got my Air Forces on, dude. It is so sick to just.
All right, do you go low top, mid top, or high top Air Forces?
It depends. I like the high tops.
I like the high tops.
Yeah,
too.
I like the high tops. If I had to pick one,
it makes me feel like Sora from Kingdom Hearts. That's my thing.
That's not where I go. But
oh, really?
Not really. But
do you have a pair in real life? Do you have high tops in real life?
I used to in like high school.
You got to get another pair.
So like 3 years ago.
It feels
That's
so
not
good
true.
to be
like
Sora.
10 years ago. It feels so good to be
Yeah,
Sora.
you're just Sora walking around because they're so huge. They're just huge shoes.
Dude, Sora does have the biggest feet ever, which is probably why Kyrie likes him, but whatever. Kingdom Hearts 4 might not happen, dude.
I hope it doesn't.
With all the Square Enix shit.
Thank God.
Really?
Don't do it, man.
So what?
You hated 3.
Square Enix like just laid. How many people did they lay off?
I don't know that. I didn't have the numbers, but I guess their financials were pretty bad. So they were like, they did this strategy where they were coming out with all these like AA games, and they were just kind of pumping games out. They were trying to just, I think they're really just trying to throw stuff at the wall, see what stuck. But like, you have like foam stars and like things in that realm that are just like, there's 0% chance this works, right?
But see, not necessarily. The problem is, you can't make a game like that requires like attention and constant updates and like some sort of involvement.
Right.
If you don't have that planned out, then like there's
but it's never going to beat Splatoon ever.
You get a bigger market. I could see that. Like Splatoon, Splatoon is awesome, especially the latest one we had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah.
But it's still very much handicapped by like you're on your Switch and the controls suck, and it's just like it doesn't work well. If you bring that over to like a kind of a triple, I'll put in air quotes like triple, like PC experience where like you can actually have like a mouse and key, like actually make it a little bit more competitive in that regard. I think there's a market for that, but if you're half-assing it, then forget about it. Like it's not gonna, like that needs to be free, and then hope that you get a big enough following. But even the free games that take off, like look at like Fall Guys or Among Us and stuff. Those are like these flashes in the pan that like everyone loves for a second, and then it's like, okay, well, like moving on. I don't know.
Yeah, I think Fall Guys is still doing well. I don't hear anything about Among Us anymore though.
Yeah,
that was really, but those are strange instances in which they're very streamable games. Like I feel like Among Us blew up because of Twitch
or because of COVID or like a million other
I guess
reasons.
But it was really, I don't know, from my perspective it was like, oh man, I want to watch Disguised Toast play Among Us like 500 IQ. Like that was, I would watch his videos every day when that was like popular, because like I love Disguised Toast and everyone was playing about it. He was my guy, and like and then I was like, oh man, I can do this with my friends, and we were playing a little bit. So I don't know, I feel like that's what blew it up. Personally,
what are you guys playing now, Jeff? What's the?
Oh, it's a good one.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Lethal Company.
Lethal Company is currently my number one, and it probably would have been my number one last year. This game.
Okay, so it didn't come out this year.
It came out in December. It's still not out. It came out on like early access last year.
Okay,
I'm counting it as a this year game.
Well, you broke your rule.
It's not. It's kind of a rule. It's kind of a rule. The reason being is. Lethal Company is a very, very special game. It is so impressive from so many different levels, and I don't want to get into it right now. I mean, we can if you want to, but
it wasn't on our list. I don't want to put you on the spot.
If there's anyone that's listening who has a friend group, people to play with, we've now introduced this game to I think 9-10 different players that have played with us, and not a single one of them hasn't come back for more. This is such an impressive game. For those of you who don't know what it is, it's a multiplayer kind of survival game. It's co-op. You're meant to play with other people. You're all on the same team, and you're employed by a company, thus the name Lethal Company. So you're employed by this company to kind of sail your ship through the universe. You land on a planet, and your entire purpose is to rummage the planet, whatever buildings they have, for raw materials, scrap metal, whatever you can find. The interesting part of it is basically everything one hits you, and you have no weapons. So... And there's proximity chat. So whenever you go into a game like this, you mute Discord, you use the proximity chat there, and it's like a literal survival horror game on these planets with like you and up to 40 of your closest friends.
Oh,
and
it's that many people?
Yeah, there's mods that extend it to 40.
Okay. What's the default?
4.
Oh, okay.
And it's not like one of those ones where like it messes with the difficulty or anything. This game is brutal. And I've never laughed as hard as ever in my life at a video game as I did playing this with buddies. It's such a simple game. Think of Among Us, there's very crude art. The assets are reused and reused and reused. Like, you see the same thing over and over again. But the situations that this game creates and puts you in, it's hilarity. It is so special, and it's such a simple concept, and it makes you wonder why more games can't capture magic like this. It makes you look at all these AAA multiplayer games, and you're thinking, what are they doing? Like, why can't, like, they put all these things all over the map, all these markers, they have you do this, all this stuff that's supposed to drive engagement, and you have this little game that was probably produced for, a budget of less than $1 million, creates the most magical moments ever with, say, 40 assets total.
Yeah.
And that's my whole spiel on Lethal Company. I don't want to spoil anything about it because it is a very experience-heavy game. But if you do have a friend group, if you guys are looking for a very cheap $10 game to play with each other, highly recommend Lethal Company.
So you guys are playing, and I caught some of the chat on Discord where it's like, oh, we have a good save, or we have a bad save, or we have, like, is that something where, like, if John and I were like, oh, we want to hop in one night or whatever, like that just screws you guys then because you have like a specific save, or we would have to start a new game, or how would that work?
No, I don't even know how we have, like, probably 30 different saves at this point.
Yeah.
This is not a game where it's like, oh, you play it one time and you're locked into that one if it's going good. You die constantly. Your game fails constantly. You're not, and that's not because of the game, it's because you just die. It's very easy to die in this game. So whenever we say things like, oh, we have a good save, that just means we're pretty good on funds. We have an opportunity to make it further than we ever made it before. If we're loading up with other people or people want to join, they're happy to join our game. This is not a game where, I'll use League of Legends, probably the worst example. You're playing with your buddies in League of Legends. You're playing with your buddies for a long time. You develop a friendship with your buddies, but you know who your bad friend players are. It's sad to say, but that's true.
Why are you looking at that?
I did it. I looked at John because John knows who his bad player friends are, and I know who my bad player friends are. And you don't resent them for it. You're always happy to play a normal with them. But in the back of your head, when you lose that game and you look at their farm or their damage done, you're like, not again.
Wow. Just ruined my life.
You do think that. You think that subconsciously. I'm sorry if you're the friend and you're listening and you know you're that friend. I'm sorry. I don't know who you are, but if you are, I'm sorry. Lethal Company is not that way. The more the merrier in Lethal Company. And I think that's another thing that makes it really magical. You never have an animosity or say somebody doesn't perform. You don't even know how, like, someone doesn't perform, quote unquote, in this game because it's so... It's so
dramatic pause.
I can't even think
so
of
like,
an adverb.
It's like a quick turnaround time. Like, you're just constantly back in, and
no, it's more along the lines of, because the world is so dangerous, because anything can happen, and because you are kind of encountering different situations every time, you can't point a finger at any one person and say you're the reason we didn't make it to the next day. It's a game that doesn't allow that because of the situations it creates, and it's very difficult to explain unless you've played it. So this is a game that no matter what skill level you are at video games, this is a player friendly video game. There's a handful of buttons. Use the forward, left, right, back, jump, and maybe the mouse, and that's really it. And
what happens if you die? Like, if I died and you guys we were all playing or something, like what do I do then? Do I just sit there and wait for...
A good question. I'll get a little bit more into what the game entails. So you're employed by this company. You set out on your spaceship. You go to the computer and you pick a moon or a planet to land on. It's day one. Say it's a fresh save. You start off on day one. You're all employed by this company. You look up at your computer screen, and there's a quota. There's a dollar quota. It'll say 0 out of 3 days, quota $150. So you have 3 days to make $150 of scrap from these planets you go to. So we go out, we land on our first moon. Tyler, unfortunately, dies. We continue. We survive. We take off in the ship. You respawn on the next day.
Okay.
So there isn't like this... We have this great save. Somebody dies. They're out of the game for a long time. Minimum, they're out of the game for, short, maybe like a minute or two. long term, maybe 10 minutes max.
Yeah.
And then they're respawned on the next day. You have another day to meet that $150 quota. Day 3 comes. That's your last day to meet quota. After day 3, you go back to the company, you sell your scrap, and hope you make $150 to meet that quota. The next 3 days come. Oh, my quota is not $150. Now my quota is $300. We have to dive deeper. We have to be a little bit more dangerous. We have to go exploring in areas that we know are dangerous because we have to meet our quota.
Yeah.
Then you meet that quota again. Now it's $450. Now it's $700. Now it's $1,000. Well, crap, we need to really push here. You can't play safe at all. We need to figure out how to get more money out of these excursions.
And there are no weapons, there's no upgrades. It's just like you just do it. Like,
so there are whenever you talk about weapons, you're going to be talking about more survival tools. So whenever you go into these planets, it's usually visibility is a problem. So one of the first things you can buy, usually on day 2, 3, or 4, well, actually it has to be day 4 after your first sell, so you have money, you'll buy like a flashlight. So you have a rechargeable flashlight. It will die on you while you're out on adventures sometimes. And then you might buy like a walkie-talkie. So what happens is, there's a radar on the ship, and usually somebody stays back with the ship with a walkie, and there's somebody in the incursion leading an excursion team into the faculty who has a walkie-talkie.
Yeah.
So you'll be like, Tyler, how we looking? And you'll be on the ship looking at like this kind of X-ray view of the facility of like where your team at, and you'd be like, yo, I got a red dot coming up on you. That could be like an enemy. That could be a landmine. That could be a trap. It could be anything. Yo, I see a red dot. Watch out to your left. And then you're like, copy that. And then then that person radios back. Yeah, we lost John. And then you're like, well, what happened? And we're like, we don't know. We had to get out of there. And then you have to like find another exit or entrance into the building. It's silly stuff like that. There are like a shovel. If you buy a shovel, it can defeat smaller enemies. If you find a stop sign, you can beat people with stop signs. So there are a couple of weapons. There is
friendly fire.
Yeah, everything's friendly fire. There's guns, there's jetpacks. But for instance, we got pretty far and we're like, we got to get the jetpack. Like the jetpack's going to be dope. We get the jetpack. Dwayne tries it on. He's like, oh, this is dope. But then it gets super unwieldy and he lands. He's like, yeah, we don't want that jetpack. Like, you can't control that thing. I was like, no, I can control this thing. So I get on the jetpack and I'm trying to control it. I'm like, yeah, I got this, guys. The jetpack decides to shoot me into the sun. So it just takes off into the atmosphere. It goes, and it goes, and I'm just dead. And then you hear on the intercoms, because once you die, you can't communicate with the team anymore, but the team can communicate with themselves, and you're kind of like shadowing them. And then someone's like, what happened to Jeff? And then Dwayne comes on, the jetpack got him. Like, it's like stuff like that. Because you don't know what the new stuff is. You don't even know what's in the game. It just creates a really magical moment.
That sounds awesome. That sounds like up my alley. I think that'd be
4 to 40 players. Well, 1 to 40 players.
I got to figure out a way to get like a bassinet down here so I can actually go back to the computer, because I've been on my PlayStation. And right now, like Battlefront is, we played 2 matches of Battlefront.
Yeah,
together,
a couple.
I just want to play it.
It was on Steam for like $4 for like everything. Yeah. Like I have every skin, everything, because the game's been out for
it's been a while, 7 years, yeah, something like that,
8 years. And I was like, why not? Because I was playing the OG one because it was Star Wars Day. So I started May 4th, watched Star Wars. I was like, oh man, I love Star Wars.
Yeah, you watched episode 2, or it's 2, didn't you? Watch 2?
4.
Oh, 4. Empire Strikes Back. Or no, that's the
4 is the first
one.
Second
of the original series.
Yeah, New Hope. Thank you. Yeah. Gotcha. So, well, my friend was like, which one should we watch? I was like, probably 4, right? On Star Wars Day. I mean, I would say 1. That's a choice.
The right answer?
A choice.
Yeah.
Anyways, so it got me really in Star Wars mood. I downloaded the original 2005 Battlefront 2, because that's like one of my favorite games of all time. And it just came out with like the new one, but it got terrible reviews. Like the new one, I put in quotes, like they kind of updated the graphics, I guess, or something. I don't even know what they did with it. But then I just downloaded a bunch of mods, went on a huge rabbit hole. It looks better than the one they came out with. It was free. And anyway, so I was doing that. Then I saw it on Steam, the new one, 2017 version for like $4. Bought that, and I was like, this is pretty fun. Like, I never was on that because the launch of that was a disaster, and EA is the scummiest piece of shit ever. So I was like, fuck this. I refuse to support these guys. But now I feel like for $4 I can support them. And it was pretty fun. And I told Tyler about it. He's like, all right, give it a shot. And I think you had a good time.
Yeah, I had a very good time because I remember playing it on Xbox with just to play with Zach, and just the controller just was feeling bad on it, like especially after getting used to like a mouse and keyboard, and then playing with you, it was just like going into it and just being like, hey, everything's pretty much unlocked, and you're just screwing around and just, I don't know, just playing. You're like, oh my gosh, like you're running, you're feeling good, and then like you see just Darth Vader walking towards you, like, all right, well, there's like, I'm dead, you know, like it's just kind of funny, and like you just hear like John being like, I'm gonna try an Ewok, and then like 5 seconds later, like, didn't work, like not a good thing. It was a lot of fun. Cool. I thought it was cool. I mean, you were playing for like, it was like a 2.5 hour like match.
When you came in to our channel, I was at the very end, so we were playing on Naboo, and there was this game mode. They added conquest to it, which is like capture the points, you know, like domination in Call of Duty essentially. But the game mode's interesting. Like, you start on the planet capturing the points, and then there's a second phase to the game. If you win the first game, you go to their ship, and then it's like Rush from Battlefield, if you remember that game type, where there's like multiple points, you got to blow them up, and then you move to the next stage, and you have to go through their ship and blow it up. But if they defend it, you go back to the planet and you play Conquest again.
Oh, this is a big mode.
It's a big boy mode. So what was happening is we would win, we would go to their ship, they would stonewall us, back to Naboo. They would win, go to our ship, we stonewall them, back, forth. The game was 2 hours and like 15 minutes.
Yeah,
it was
that's a big boy mode.
Unbelievable, dude. It was crazy. I had like 270 kills.
Sounds awesome.
Like, it was, you have to be in it, dude. And it's just like, it's crazy. And then finally winning, we finally won, dude. It was insane. But it brought me back to like Battlefield. I love Battlefield, like back in the day, like Battlefield 3, Bad Company 2, 3, 4 was good too. I still think Battlefield 1 was very good, but I think Tyler disagrees with me on that. But just that big battle, you have your class, you have your job, you're trying to affect the battle in any small way that you can. Just put that one push to capture something, that one grenade that kills a bunch of people dug in on the other side. It's just a really cool feeling. Although this has like that extra level of like, oh, now I'm Darth Vader and just slaughtering everyone. But I had a lot of fun with it.
Bad Company 2 also came out in 2010.
Yeah, it did.
Oh, no.
Just saying.
Anyways.
Yeah.
We have stuff we want to talk about.
Sorry, yeah, no, that was on there. Okay.
I'm going to grab another beer real quick, though. And then
do you want to grab 3?
Yeah, I'll do that. And you can just into the next topic.
If you don't mind.
What are we starting with? The music?
Well, we can't start with the music without you. We can
set it up.
We can BS.
All right.
I don't even know how to pronounce his name. I can't set that up.
I did not know how to pronounce his name.
I can't do that.
I tried coming here. I was like,
tell you what, can we talk about Stellar? We're kind of on video games. Can we talk about Stellar Blade?
I can talk about Stellar Blade.
I played a little bit of it.
Wouldn't probably have to get through. Are we trying to just bullshit Stellar Blade or trying to go through Stellar Blade?
Oh,
how about this? Why don't we do this? Since
do?
I got through it, why don't you just tell me your initial impressions? Because you're probably fresh on it.
I am fresh on it. Yeah. So I played very little of the demo, and then you were kind of to let me borrow it. So I started it last night. My initial impressions, very jiggly and very like kind of just like, oh, I can see why everyone's like giving it crap for like being like super sexualized, like like they spent a lot of time with like the boob physics and the movement and the hair and everything. I get that. No, but I think overall it was pretty good. I didn't feel instantly connected to the combat. I think through I mean, I probably only played like maybe like a couple hours.
Okay.
Maybe it'd take 2 to 3 hours, something like that. I've gotten better at reading things and kind of, okay, like this is when I should block. Like the timing just felt off to me, generally speaking. Like when I thought I should hit something to parry it or to block it or even to dodge, it wasn't connecting. And then I've kind of like retrained myself to hit that. So a lot of the basic enemies and everything like that, I feel like I'm good. So I have come around on that. The movement is pretty good as well, generally speaking. So, for instance, like in the beginning, I was like, man, like I spent a long time like as you're running down like the beachhead, I'm just like, okay, like how do I run? And then turns out they just like lock that and you can't do it yet. So there are some things
you're trying to hold the joystick down to run and stuff like that.
And I'm just like, man, am I just like I was hitting the triggers, I was hitting like the face button, like what am I doing? So stuff like that is kind of annoying, that where they gate some of it. I guess why they're doing it for tutorial purposes, but it's annoying. Also annoying, you just can't skip cutscenes, like apparently. So I had to like replay all of that and watch Eve get birthed or again or whatever from the beginning. I sent you and John the video of like,
I was dying.
I don't think this is a very good game, and then I just see her like climbing a ladder, and it's just like basically just like a camel toe in your face. I'm like, oh, I get it now, Jeff. Okay. Which apparently you could take off her clothes. I didn't realize that. Like you can just have like she's not naked, but she has like a tan suit on.
So that's a difficulty option. So what you do is when you take off her armor and you're wearing the skin suit, that removes any armor that you would have at all.
Right.
So if you're looking for a more difficult experience, it just so happens to coincide with a nude bodysuit. I mean, she's like you said, she's clothed, but it is skin color. It is kind of
she's naked.
She's a little naked. But it is also a difficulty option that I wish I would have known about earlier, and I'll get to that in a topic down the road. But yeah, it is. I found her initial clothing really off-putting. I was like, why is she dressed like a leprechaun? She's in a leprechaun outfit.
She has like a necktie on.
It's like
and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I don't understand. It felt like part of it felt a little bit actually like Warframe, where like you have this like this suit and then you have her hair, which is kind of like your scarf. It was a weird thing, but voice acting bad, just across the board bad. The dialogue is actually bad. So I actually wrote it down where they were talking about like, oh, why were you created? Oh, you're like essentially it was saying like, oh, so you were created to wipe out this entire species. This is what this guy said. He's like, oh, imagine being like created to wipe out this entire species. And then something along the lines of like, that doesn't sound like fun, or that doesn't sound like you having fun. Like literally says the word fun. And I'm like, you just talked about genocide and used the word fun like in the next sentence. That's the level of like writing. And it was just like, man, that kind of sucks. I think the character design like for the enemies is pretty cool, but I don't know why. And maybe it's just like I was expecting like FromSoft level, like just wild things. I haven't seen anything too crazy yet. In all honesty, some of the characters, like I'm a big visual person in that like I think game design and like how things are like, you know, created in front of you. Like I can't tell when like someone's back is to me or something like that. So if I'm trying to go through and like stealth kill something or whatever, a lot of the enemies, you can't tell what's their front and what's their back unless they're like running at you. You're like, oh, okay, I can see it. Small nitpick. It's the character design, whatever. I got kind of I'm in like the city. I just got to the drowned city, which looks a little bit more unique. Like I beat the electric dude and
okay,
stuff like
I know
that.
exactly where you're.
Yeah, so I'm not terribly far, but it's like I got kind of turned around. Not because I don't think like I don't think I was having an issue with like pathing and stuff like that. I think like the movement's actually good, like the jumping and like the mantling and stuff. But like I was having issues where like it just looked very samey, and not just, oh, I'm in a city, so like there's buildings or crumpling things or whatever. But like it almost looked like the way it was designed was just like mirrored images of each other. So I was like, okay, well, like which side did it actually come out on? And I like went underground and I came back up and I'm like, wait a minute. And I did that. I felt like an idiot half the time just trying to find different places. I also have this just innate, like I have to just hug the edge of the boundaries to make sure I'm getting every one of those crates and stuff like that. To my knowledge, is there an actual like map? Am I just dumb and haven't seen the map yet?
There is.
At least where I'm at.
There's no map for where you're at.
Okay.
The best thing you have is the scan. And I don't know if you've been using it. It's kind of lackluster, but there is no map for it. So don't feel like you're crazy.
Okay.
You will never have a map for that area.
And that's completely fine, but it's like if you're putting collectibles out, it's like I just want to know, like, am I even in the ballpark of like, oh, you have 5. Do I have 5 out of 8 or do I have 5 out of 50 and I'm just missing everything type of thing?
One of the things that might help you, and this is what helped me through that thought process, and I'm still missing a collectible in that first area. It's driving me bonkers, but I was playing through the game with a mentality of I'm not going to look anything up. If you go into like the start menu and then you scroll over to system, and I think it's like data banks, it'll say like one of the main collectibles in this game are those codes, right? The boxes with the codes. It's probably the most collectible thing you're looking for. And it'll say like the area you're in, and it'll say you have found this code, like 1 of 6 code, 2 of 6 code, 3 of 6 code.
Gotcha.
And it'll also tell you if you use that code.
Okay.
So if you got a code and it says used, that means that you unlock that chest. If you have a code and it says unused, that might be a hint in your mind to say, oh, there was a chest back there. I should go back and see if this code works for it. It's not a perfect system. Excuse me. I will say that the first zone and maybe one other zone in the game are probably the only ones that you'll have this issue with, because the game does have a really weird kind of pathing and pacing, and I'll talk about that later. But I would say that whenever I went back and even in New Game Plus, I experienced exactly what you're talking about. I bet it's in like that square area when you come down from the parking garage. You can kind of go around.
Yeah, and there's like there's 2, like you're going underground to like almost like a subway area-ish looking thing, and you come up the other side. Now you get the collectibles, but then it's like, all right, and then you just go back and they're just like, wait a minute, was I just here? And it's just this weird, like you're walking in circles type of thing.
I experienced that too, and I think that first area was probably, like I said, one of maybe 2 times I experienced that in the entirety of the game. I think it's very difficult to get lost in this in the game overall, so I wouldn't let that be too much of a worry for you. But I do think the ultimate problem of the game is you spend a lot of time just looking for power cells to power up a battery that opens a door. Like that is a constant.
Yep.
That is so blatant, and it feels like a lazy design choice, because the entirety of the game, it doesn't get better in that regard. You are looking for power cells to open a door, or you're looking for which dead body has the code that I need. Yeah, that's kind of probably one of the most constant design elements in the game outside of its combat. But I feel you, I think probably a lot of the players when they first come to this game is going to experience that, especially coming down from that parking garage area, because it allows you to circle the next parking garage. Mm-hmm. So you come back. The only thing that kind of was my guiding light is where are the enemies. So I'd always try to like look for, is there an enemy that I haven't killed? Because I'm trying to kill everything, find everything. Oh, there's an enemy over there. That probably means I haven't went there.
God forbid, though, you don't sit on a freaking parking bench and just respawn everybody like a FromSoft game. You know, so like that's the other thing is like, you know, you do that. I would sit down and just like kind of like recharge my whatever health or like my health pots or whatever, and then it's just like, oh, now everything's respawned. It's like, well, okay, like I just got to see like, okay, oh, there's unexploded barrels over here. I guess I'm gonna go. Like that's what I've been doing. It's just like every barrel I see, I just smack it just to explode it and whatnot. But yeah, I think overall it's good. I actually don't mind the UI for the upgrades and things like that. I thought that was actually very accessible. Maybe like almost too bland, probably for certain people, but for me, I think it was just right. Where it's like it's cool. Very, I think it's very well laid out. I think it's very simplistic, and it's what I wanted. Where it's like, okay, I'll pick this move of like, oh, I want to be able to sneak up behind someone and kill them, and then immediately jump to the next person or something. And you can kind of like pick how you want to play. And I thought that was really cool. I think it's cool that you can kind of just like reset all that whenever you want to and things like that. I didn't feel like too locked in. So I don't know. Overall, like I'm gonna keep playing it. Like this is. Again, it's one of those games where would this be on the top of my list if I could have access to my PC where I have like maybe a dozen games that came out this year that I'm just waiting to play? Probably not. But is it happen to be the game on the PlayStation that, you know, as I'm holding my daughter, like I can either play that or Tekken, right? So if I'm by myself, I'm playing that.
I mean, for me, this is. And I don't know if we just want to dive into it now or
yeah, I mean, go for it. I mean, we'll do that and then the Symphony,
because this is my either number 2 or number 1 game of the year, and I don't think anything's going to beat it aside from like Hades, maybe Balatro. And that's not speaking to the year itself, but this game, for instance, what you're saying right now, what you're explaining to me, I'm actually shocked that you're even positive on it at all. When I was in the same era you're in, I was fresh coming off of Dragon's Dogma 2, and I was like praying I did not have another Dragon's Dogma 2 on my hands, because that's how bad that this first area of the game felt to me. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that I can say is the game never stops getting better. So,
which is awesome.
While the game retains some of its redundancies and things that aren't great about it throughout the entire game, like the story's kind of bland. There's these puzzles that it's like, why am I doing these? This feels not great. Like, I'm always collecting power cells. I'm looking for these codes. That stays constant. The bad things stay constant, but the good things only get better, and they get really, really good. So I was going to kind of set the scene for the listeners. If you don't know what Stellar Blade is, it is Shift Up Corporation, a South Korean developers' very first foray into a major platform. The developer made a handful of mobile games, very gacha game style things. So this is kind of like their first AAA game. You play as Eve, we'll call her a battle angel, sort of figure who has come down from the heavens to save humanity. So the Earth is essentially gone. This is a very post-apocalyptic world. There was a war between some kind of beasts, they're called the Nutibas, and humanity. Humanity lost and had to retreat to the stars. They had to give up Earth to these Nutibas. Humanity's response was to send these battle angels, and for some reason they're these beautiful women with the same exact character model
in high-heeled platform shoes.
It's a very Korean
angels
style
don't look
choice.
like that, or
and their way to reclaim the Earth after this war is to send these battle angels down to wipe out the Nutibas. And you play as Eve, one of many battle angels. You don't meet many of them, but you do know that they're kind of like these super marines, if you will, if you're a 40K guy. So the one thing about her is she's very much like a living weapon. So we're talking about like how bad the dialogue is and all these story points. Once you beat the game, there is kind of like, and I will not spoil anything, not that sadly there's not that much to spoil because the story is so bad, but for instance, when Eve is dropped down on Earth, she isn't even really privy to what rain is. So it starts raining on Earth, and she goes through this dialogue of, oh, this must be what, rain is, because she's never experienced it. So that's kind of like if you keep that mindset of what Eve is throughout the game, you might start to understand some of the narrative a little bit better. That's not an excuse for it. It's just all around bad. But you have to understand that this is a warrior, a living weapon.
So real quick, because I was trying, so I played that intro in the demo, and I played it again when I was playing the actual game, and I was trying to wrap my head around that, because I was like, okay, from the voice acting standpoint, like whenever her like pod gets ripped open and like her friend's like, it's dangerous, but she said it like, it is not safe out here, come on, and it's just like very monotone, very deliberate. So I'm like, okay, maybe that's just how they are. They don't show emotion. I don't know. Like, I guess I was trying to give excuses for just, it's not great. Anyway, continue. Yeah.
And to make matters worse is if you go to the Stellar Blade website, there's like a 30 panel, I forget what they call it. It's not a webcomic, but a action or animated comic. Mm-hmm. It's like a 30 panel comic that somehow gives more context to Eve than the entirety of the game. In 30 panels. It takes like a minute to scroll through, and I read it, and then at the end it's like, learn more about Eve, and you click on it and it like takes you to the store to buy the game.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where's this? Where is this type of storytelling and context to Eve within the game? Because it's just non-existent. And in this 30 panel, I'm like, I feel like I know Eve more than ever.
Yeah.
But the story itself, this is a very tropey sci-fi story. It's if you don't see where it's coming, it'll foreshadow it, or you can predict it, or it's like, oh, that happened, or the story is so like you lose interest in it so much that whenever a major plot point hits, you're kind of like, oh, was I supposed to like know what that was, or was that
was this supposed to be like a
was
big
this supposed
moment?
to hit
Yeah.
because I don't even know what that word is, kind of thing. But you see these like themes of like AI, androids, biblical destruction, and rebirth. It's like all there. It's all mashed up.
Game of the year, by the way. I want to keep everyone on this. For
me,
you're saying
definitely.
for you, it's
Yes.
game of the year. Okay,
I am waiting for the drop. Yeah, the big drop.
Behind Hades 2. I'm already like Hades 2 for me is probably it, and then Lethal Company.
Have you played Hades 2?
I refuse to.
Yeah, okay.
But it is gonna slap. From what I already hear about it, like that game's gonna slap.
Do we count? I was talking to Tyler about this. Does that count for this year because it's early access?
It's gonna be out this year. Like it has a release date.
Oh,
in October.
Does it now?
I believe so.
Okay.
I'd be shocked if it doesn't.
It
for how
didn't when I
complete
was looking
it
at it.
feels. Well, from what people say of how complete it feels, I'd be shocked if it doesn't come out this year.
Yeah.
I don't want to play it and be like, get all the way through it, and then it changes. You know, that kind of just weirds me. Or not weirds me out, but it's like a weird feeling for me. Where it's
I just struggle with like, I'm gonna go have a great hamburger. I'm gonna take one bite of that hamburger and leave the rest for next week. Like, does that make sense? Does anyone?
I would not do that.
I would not
personally.
eat that hamburger next week.
It's like for me, it's like I have a hamburger, right? And I'm like, oh, that was a good hamburger. And then they send me another hamburger, and like this was our original vision for the hamburger. It's a little
it would be
different.
like you
and
ate
I'm
that
like,
hamburger.
but my memory of the hamburger, like that's already concrete. Now this is a new hamburger to me, but you're telling me it's the same one.
It's like the biggest hamburger you ever ate. You eat it, you're full, you're satiated. Like you're like, oh man, I could eat another bite.
Yeah.
And then they drop down a better hamburger in front of you.
Right,
saying,
exactly.
Like, oh, this
yeah,
is actually
exactly,
the one you should have had.
It's exactly like
and you
that.
just couldn't eat it right away. Yeah.
I
Anyway.
just don't like to spoil.
Yeah.
Or get a taste for the game and then that be cut off by a limitation of like it's not part of early access. And that's the same reason I didn't play No Rest for the Wicked. I already know that these are games that I'm going to purchase, play. I'm excited that people get excited to be part of the dev cycle, get early access. I understand that. That's just not for me.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go back to. I know you injected.
No, you're fine. I'll just say, to cap off the story of Stellar Blade, there are a couple of moments where I cried, and I don't even know these characters. And I think one of the only things that you will find is there is one character that is good in this game, and you unlock her in the demo, so I don't feel like this is a spoiler. It's very early on, but you do get a companion to Eve, and it's very much a bigger daughter, little sister, or bigger daughter, big sister, little sister dynamic, and they kind of do go back and forth, and you can kind of see a little semblance of like character development there, very minimal. If I want to go through this game very quickly, I would just not actually play through the game, but analyze it. I would view it as an amalgamation of so many influences. You can see influences everywhere. So even just in anime, there are very blatant like Gundam Wing Endless Waltz references. There are huge Parasite references. There is what am I thinking of? Oh, Zoids. Like if anyone watches Zoids, it's like, did they just rip that from Zoids? And movies like Matrix, Kill Bill, I was like shocked that our ship was not named Nebuchadnezzar because of how many Matrix references there are in this game. Blatant Final Fantasy VII, Sekiro, Devil May Cry influences. Like this game it feels like they pieced together a game with how many influences and inspirations that they pulled from. It feels like very patchwork in that way. And I know that the developer has gone on record saying Nier Automata is our main inspiration for this game. I did not complete Nier Automata, but seeing everything, like there are scenes where I'm like, that is in Gundam Endless Waltz. You are Wing Zero right now. Like it feels that like pulled from, and some people might like that. I actually did. I thought it was a reason to get excited about the game. Other people are going to see that, and even if they don't make that reference, they're just going to say, okay, that doesn't feel original. It doesn't feel cohesive. Again, this is like my number 2 game of the year. So before I get to the good stuff, the last thing I will say about the campaign is it takes place in roughly, I think, 8 or 9 zones. So what you're experiencing right now in where you're at, Tyler, or if you played the demo, is the first linear zone. After the linear zone, you go to an open world zone. After the open world zone, you go to a shooter level. After the shooter level, you go back to a linear level. Then you go to another open world. And then you go to another shooter level. And then you go back to another linear. So there's this really weird tempo that's set of like, you're now going to explore this linear level with all your abilities, no map, but it's like a Devil May Cry level. Then you're going to go to this open world, like almost Horizon-esque, not nearly as good as Horizon, but this Horizon open world where you have a map, you have these like markers, you can kind of do whatever. And then for some reason it goes to a shooter level, which is somehow fun. Like I don't get it, but I actually enjoyed the shooter levels. So there is this very weird an amalgamation of inspirations, an amalgamation of design that is either going to be hit or miss for people. I thought it was okay. Take it. I don't know. It was just interesting. If I want to cut this review short, I'll just get to where the game really shines. And that is in its combat. There's going to be a point where you're probably 40% through this game, maybe a little less, maybe a little bit more. I can't remember, where you're going to encounter a boss and you're going to go, holy fuck, that slapped. From design perspective, from music, from arena, from combat, you're going to be like, what just happened? And I had this aha moment. I was like, please give me more of that. And the game keeps giving you that. It keeps slapping you with these bosses that are just out of this world. And all I could think of when I was playing these bosses, I remember I texted you whenever I beat the game. I was like, you won't even believe the last 4 bosses. They're out of this world good. All I could think of is I wish Final Fantasy 16 delivered on this, because Final Fantasy 16 had the music, had the design, had the arena, completely lacked the combat. And this game slaps in combat and it only gets better. People call this game a Souls-like, and it pisses me off. If you're one of those people, you're pissing me off, because that is such a disservice to what this game actually is. It is very different from a Souls-like. I can only call it a reactive combat system. So if you're where you're at, Tyler, you've probably encountered a couple of ways you can counter the enemy. So for the listeners, whenever you encounter an enemy, it's not like a God of War where you're diving all over the place and slapping and spamming triangle for your blades. It's a very reactive system. You're waiting to see what the enemy will do so you can best react to the enemy. So if the enemy just normal attacks you, that's kind of your signal to parry and to try and perfect parry and break down its, I don't think it's called poise. I think it's like
stance type of thing.
I think it's stagger or something like that.
Yeah.
And if the enemy attacks with like a blue attack, that's your signal. I have to perfect dodge this forward. And then something cool happens. If the enemy does a yellow attack, that's my cue. I cannot parry this. I need to either perfect dodge it or just run the fuck away. If the enemy does a purple attack, that is my cue where I have to perfect dodge this backwards, and then something cool happens again. And that is just in the first level. So right off the get-go, you have 4 ways that you have to react to any given enemy or boss. And when I say this game only gets better, by the end of the game, you are juggling, I wrote it down here, but I think it's 9 total ways to respond to a boss. And that might sound like hectic. Like, how am I supposed to do this 9 different ways of rock, paper, scissors? The only way I can say it is there's a rhythm to it. And once you get the rhythm, these fights feel like no other video game that you played. I actually went through my PlayStation catalog. I went through all my physical games. I was like, what can I compare this game to? And it's really just a little bit of Sekiro and maybe a little tiny bit of Elden Ring. I haven't played anything else that comes close to what the combat does in the final segments of this game. And it is so incredibly special, to the point where I don't even want to talk about the different combat things that you get, because that is part of the experience of developing the combat style of the game. So the game slowly introduces you to these new elements, to the point where the final 2 bosses have things that you've never even seen in the entire game. You're like, where did these come from? These are awesome. And it's almost to a detriment, because whenever I started New Game Plus and pushed the difficulty to hard, I was hoping to see some of these elements carry over. Unfortunately, the hard and New Game Plus, it's kind of just like a more damage, more HP kind of situation, which I was really let down by. But in a nutshell, like this game just actually made a quick list. This isn't like definitive, but I made a best boss list. So it's like, of course, Ishin the Sword Saint from Sekiro is the best boss ever in gaming. Then it goes Genichiro from Sekiro, obviously the second best boss in all of gaming. Then it goes Malenia, Kiriko from Sifu. This random bull boss from Elden Ring is like number 5. And then there's this like random Persona 5 royal boss that like slapped for a turn-based RPG. But then in my list, it goes 4 Stellar Blade bosses. Like they're that good. And we're talking from a music perspective for John. The boss music during some of these encounters, you have orchestral, you have symphony, you have heavy metal, and then you get slapped with a K-pop boss that makes you want to put on your skirt, makes you want to put on your wig, and just bob around like you're like an idol. It'll make you feel it. It'll make you feel like an idol that is like this battle angel, and you're like, I am sexy right now. It'll make you feel that way.
There are male K-pop groups too. I don't know what's good.
Oh, there are? Are there?
Big ones.
Oh, I thought they were something called different. I thought they were like...
No, it's still K. I mean, it's just Korean pop.
You know what? I think you're right.
I know them, right?
There's like those are the ones with like 9 members, right?
Yeah, they typically have. I don't know how many they have, like 6 plus, and they all have a. I actually just watched an anime on this. Of course, they all have like positions.
Yeah,
it's very regimented. Anyways, continue. Sorry.
The last thing I'll say, because it's almost difficult for me to hype up this game, because I don't want to say what makes it so special, because that'll take away from your experience going through it.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
The last thing I will say is the bosses have a cadence and a pace to them that is so good that it was probably the first time I ever even thought about boss fight pacing. There are some that just, like Liza P, another South Korean developed game, really struggled with boss pacing, even though some of their bosses were very good. One of the major complaints was, okay, I got through phase 1, I mastered it, I don't get hit in phase 1 anymore, but I have to redo that every time just to get to phase 2, just to get one shot, and I have to go through all of phase 1 again. Like, their pacing and cadence was very different. This has like, it is amazing the emotions and phases and different things that come together in some of the boss fights that you feel in conjunction with the music. Like the music is so involved in these boss fights that I seriously haven't experienced anything like it. And it sucks that it takes so long to get there. Like we're talking, 40, 50, 75% through the game. That's when these things start to really sing with all the different combat
elements. How long
elements
does it take you to beat the game?
Mine is not a really good estimate, because I have like 50 hours in the game, and that's beating it, doing a lot of the collectibles, and going through New Game Plus, and that was like 50 hours. If you are going really fast, mainstreaming it, you could probably beat this in 20 to 25 hours. Can be a short game.
So around like 10, 12 hour mark,
you should be hitting
getting wowed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it is just, I understand, like everyone that criticizes this game and says this is a 6 out of 10, this is a 65, a 70 out of 10, I can't even argue with them, because there are elements that are so poor in this game that they really stand out, and you can't make an argument against them because they're so blatant. But the things that it does right are so good that if you as a person gravitate towards gameplay, and this is not difficult gameplay, I might add, the last couple of bosses you're probably going to have some difficulty with, but for the most part, everyone can get a handle on this combat. That's why I don't like people calling it like a Souls-like. That turns people off.
Yeah, I found that out right away. Yeah. I'm like, if this was a Souls-like, I probably would have dropped this thing like pretty close in. The fact that I'm like 3-4 hours in is enough to be like, okay, well, it's not. Like, it's okay.
It just does a fantastic job of, I think, teaching you its mechanics and making them also accessible. And this is also a game that I think, for me personally, I think it needed a little bit of a difficulty hike, because you couldn't choose hard mode from the get-go. But I think as a mass appeal, people aren't going to get turned off by getting hit by a monster, right? Like you can absorb some hits. I think it's very lenient in that way, even from bosses. You get hit by a boss, there's usually a pretty nice window to heal up, to get back in there. There's a lot of items that you have at your disposal compared to like a Souls. Like you have a Phoenix down you can pop if you want for every fight, like if you really want to take it that far. I got to the point where this is a game where if you break their poise, if you parry enough attacks, you get a special attack on any monster, and it does a healthy amount of damage. And if you break a boss's poise, you get like a custom animation with the boss. So I was at the point where I was killing bosses too fast to where I would have to purposefully die because I didn't want to miss seeing that cool animation that Eve has with her weapons with the boss. So I'd have to restart bosses or purposely die to them just so that I could ensure that I got enough parries off.
Yeah.
So I would have liked to see the difficulty hiked up a little bit, but that's just for me. I think this is a very accessible action game that makes you feel like a rock star in combat.
See, I have yet to feel that since DMC. Not Devil May Cry, but like DMC. Specifically DMC. Where
you're gonna feel it.
Like that game was such a. I was not expecting anything from that. I got it like on sale, whatever, and I played it. And I was like for whatever reason, man, I love that game. I thought the bosses were cool. I thought the ideas were cool. So like I've been looking for that type of like just action game, and I would say Hi-Fi Rush kind of it's a different thing, but like Hi-Fi Rush is good. But yeah, like I was hoping that this would be maybe like on par with that or something. I will say DMC grabbed me right away. This one is like, all right, like I'll take your word for it. We'll put another,
this
3-4 sessions in to get to the quote unquote good stuff. But
this game made me want to return it when I first started playing.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah. I thought it was that horrendous, and that was part of my negativity coming off of Dragon's Dogma, which no idea how any critic ever gave it like above a 70. It's mind-boggling to me. But this game, I had to get through it, and whenever I lent it to you, like I wasn't lying. Not that I didn't want to lend it to you, but I don't. For instance, there's 3 endings to this game. I only got 1 ending, and I'm missing 2 bosses. So, like, whenever I do get through it and get back into that summer lull of games where I'm not sure what I'm going to play, I'm sure that Stellar Blade is going to be my off-stream game.
If you want to play it, man, you can take it back. I literally have a sealed copy up there that I'm going to return to GameStop.
Please return that. Please return that. And just to cap things off, I know I've kind of gone on and on about this game, but if I'm going to give it an official score, my critical eye, if I'm being honest with every player out there, I'm going to give it the highest, like 78 possible. My personal score is like an 85 because of how much I weigh combat and boss encounters and that, that shot of adrenaline you get when you beat a boss and it's like, that was sick. I'm giving like an 85, 86. But there are just so many things that are blatantly wrong with this game that you can't ignore them.
The fact that you have to like hold the trigger down and just pick things up and just run around and just like
you can fix that. Stuff. Don't have to do it.
Can you?
In settings, there's an auto loot button.
That's so stupid. Man.
Highly encourage you to.
I'm glad you told me.
Highly encourage you to put that on.
All right. Well, I'll do that. That fixes one of my UI gripes. Not even UI gripes, just like general control gripes. Yeah.
The combat UI I think is very good.
So, because you are a contributor of the couch company, what do you want to put it? You want to put it at 85 or what's your?
You have to. If you.
Well, no, I will. But you put your score. Everyone puts their own score on, and then we do the.
Yeah. So if you are looking at the Couch Company website, I don't weigh anything. For my own taste, like I don't give anything a bump just because I know that I like the game. I give the game based off of its merits. I put it 78.
78. Okay. Yeah. Locked in. There you go. And I'll play it and we'll see.
She is pretty hot though, right?
I don't know.
No?
I think your friend's hotter. I don't like the long hair. You can change that in the settings too. Yeah.
And eventually you unlock haircuts so you can change it to anything you want.
Ooh, great. It bugs me. I don't know.
I mean, she is modeled after a real woman, right? So we do have that going for you. This isn't some like sweaty nerd in the studio thinking like, I'm just gonna make this super hot. Like it is a real person, right? So that is kind of cool. And she's super hot. Like I don't know. And like if we go down the rabbit hole of like sexuality in video games and the over sexualization, look, this is a world where we have Bayonetta, and Bayonetta is incredibly more sexualized than Eve ever will be, just because of the way she's wrote, her personality, the attacks you do. This just happens to be a more graphically superior game,
yeah,
so
yeah.
you kind of get right. There's less to the imagination than you do have like on the Switch with Bayonetta, and there's like a handful of other games we could point to. I just think it's a part of the medium. We have to understand that Korea is a very cosmetic heavy country where this is developed. Beauty is something that is much more at the forefront of everybody's daily lives in South Korea. Here in America, we kind of live a little bit of a different cosmetic life. South Korea, 50% of all cosmetics are actually sold to men because that is how much of a beauty-focused culture they live in. So I'm not surprised that this is like a character design that we get out of South Korea, even if we're looking at Lies of P, which is a pretty gritty Pinocchio story. Pinocchio is like sexy.
Yeah, he was gonna say
Like,
he's pretty.
He's
pretty pretty.
Yeah, he has like these glossy lips and these freckles.
He stands in rain, and his shirt, like his white shirt, kind of clings to his.
Right.
Starts seeing the skin through it and whatnot. Yeah.
So while we can point fingers and say like it's a little much, which sure, we also have to understand this is developed in a different country. They have different. Not values, but it's just different. And was developed by a female artist. Like this wasn't a male who wanted to put the biggest tits on a girl and make them jiggle. Like this had a female character designer and a female model. So
I will say, like in gameplay, that fades very quickly. Like you're not focusing.
You stop
on
looking.
it.
You're not even
exactly.
looking.
You're just yeah. Cool. All right. Locked in. Stellar Blade.
John, do you think you'll play this game?
I don't know, dude. I was planning on it because it was, a big game that was coming out, but then it got like an 82, and I was like,
Okay.
I see that purple, but if Tyler gets to 45% or whatever, and it's like, dude, you got to play this, I'll take his word for it. Because the last time he said that, I played Alan Wake 2, and it was fucking awesome. So that was a good game. Did you ever play that game?
I mean, I have it. I played it, and it's so scary that
you never finished it. I remember you were starting it,
and it's not like a super horror. Like it's a jump scare thing. Like I can deal with horror and scary, but the thing that Alan Wake did for me, and it was really present, was the superimposed images on the screen that pop out of nowhere.
That are like live action. So it's just like
it really that is something that puts me on edge for the entirety of the game. Like even whenever I'm going into like the cabin and or even in the menus, that I'm so uncomfortable during that game that it makes it difficult to get through. I'll get through it someday. I really want to. I absolutely want to get through Baldur's Gate 3. I would even say I have to get through these games. But it was just a really difficult game for me to play.
Yeah.
That's fair.
All right.
Well,
I talked a lot. You guys talk.
No, that's a good perspective. We appreciate it. You're very well thought out when you talk about games. I feel like you have such a great respect for the medium that you really do your due diligence and you're thorough in your analysis and
fair.
Yeah. So I appreciate that, and I think other people appreciate that too. We always get really good feedback when you come on talk through games because you're very passionate about it. So, my
last closing comment. If you're listening to me, developers, please, if your highlight of your game is the boss encounters, please include a boss rush mode after you beat the game. I want to go back and replay these bosses so badly, perfect them, not get hit. I just really wish there was a boss rush mode. That would have.
So do you like those games where they do like a gauntlet of bosses?
I did that for Bloodstained: Curse of the Moon, where you do the boss rush and you go hitless through all bosses, and that is just that is my dopamine. That is my better than sex.
I could not be more different. I'm just if I get through a boss, oh, thank goodness. I have to.
But you're a big gameplay guy too, though.
I am. Yeah.
You gameplay guys, I don't get it. Give me my story. I know the story. I'm happy. It was a cool story.
You're gonna find it here.
This is coming from the League of Legends guy, by the way.
That's my thing, though. I have League, so I play other games because League doesn't have it. Well, I mean, I watch Arcane. Does that count? That was a good story.
Yeah, it counts.
There you go. League's a perfect game.
All right. Symphony, number 5.
Yeah, speaking of passions, I completely forget the context of this, but for some reason I got these guys to listen to Shostakovich's Fifth Symphony. I don't remember why, but they did. So now we're going to have an in-depth discussion on this. So the reason I proposed this one is because in a lot of classical music, I mean, the interpretation is very up to the listener, and in this one as well, but there is more of a story and there's more of a concrete meaning behind this one, which I thought was interesting. And I think people that aren't as involved with this kind of music gravitate towards that more. So, for example, one of the most popular classical pieces is The Planets by Holst. Essentially, every movement is a planet, and it's like connects to like Mars is the bringer of war, right? And then the themes in that movement are very heavy and dramatic and explosive and warlike, obviously. So, like, it's easier to connect from an audience perspective because they're like, oh, war, I know what that is. I hear those themes. That makes sense, right? Jupiter is like jolly. Oh, okay, that's cool. So, since this one has like that kind of connection, not that much, but there is a concrete kind of reasoning behind what he wrote. I thought it was interesting. So anyways, and it's just one of the greatest pieces ever made. So I try to get people to listen to it that way too.
Sure.
Shostakovich is a beast. Russian composers are like on a different level, dude. They are so amazing. It's crazy. But anyways, I want you guys to go. So I want you guys to go first. I want to hear your thoughts. Whatever you like, whatever stood out to you. If there's a particular message you felt was exposed during this, or whether you liked it or you didn't like it or whatever. So I'll leave it up to you. I don't know who wants to go first, but I'm just very curious to hear your thoughts.
So I'm incredibly embarrassed on...
I should start with this.
No,
you should not be embarrassed. There is literally... I know when people say, oh, there's no right or wrong answer. Like, obviously there's right or wrong answer. In this, there really isn't. Maybe there's a couple, but I doubt you would say that. Like, you have to be really dense, and you're a smart person. So it's like,
no. Don't set me up.
I'm not setting you up.
Okay.
It's literally just tell me how you feel. Like, feelings can't be wrong. I'm just saying, like, well, I don't even want to say it. I don't even want to influence anything. But like, you're totally okay. I don't want you to feel embarrassed. It's not even about like think about it from the other perspective. Like, if I was talking about design, I feel like you have zero judgment when I come from a place of ignorance on anything as it comes to that. And that is reciprocated in this particular situation, even though I have more experience. I wouldn't even say more knowledge, but just more experience with it.
Do you want to go first, or what do you have, Jeff? Like, do you have like a analyzed piece? I know you were talking. If you need a break, I can run through mine.
Yeah, I'd appreciate if you go first.
Yeah, I can do that. So here's the problem. I started this, and I was just going to just kind of like write like, oh, I like the melody here, or I like whatever, and I started that, and then it was like, and we were talking about this when you came over because I had like 8 minutes left, and I was like, all right, John, we got to go down. I'm finishing this out. But it's like it is telling a story, and more so than really any other piece that I've listened to. At least, not that I'm sitting and listening to a ton of pieces, so like it, but it was like it was telling a story, and I was like, oh, I could like almost like it was like foreshadowing it, and I could see kind of like where it was going. And I kept struggling on like, am I forcing it into kind of what I would play out in my head as this stuff is going? So anyway, I can run through this on how I view the entire piece to be.
Just let it rip, man.
And I named, okay, I know, I'm just trying to like put this, so this sounds like really
I think you're
stupid.
trying to cover, like I don't want you to be self-conscious about
this. There
are
4 parts. Part 1.
Yes.
I call part 1 the Empire.
Okay. Nice.
So part 1 starts off and it demands attention. You have kind of like it draws you in, and then it goes into this kind of quiet, peaceful playing, like all's right with the world. And then it kind of fades into something a little bit more regal, but like not necessarily in a bad way, right? Like it's regal, and it's kind of like trumpets and different things like that.
Is it like 10-minute mark?
Nah, around there, like before then. I have a few more notes before the 10-minute mark. I actually have a 10-minute mark written down. But it goes a little bit more regal, but then you start getting these notes, and I don't know what they're, I mean, like maybe in a minor key or something, but it's almost like, and I wrote this down. You know when a good guy comes on the screen and he's like super helpful and super like, hey, look at me, everything's great, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, that dude's a bad guy. Like this is a bad thing. Yeah. So I wrote that where it's like it's regal, but in a weird way, the notes seem off after, like a minute or something. And I'm just like, this isn't great. And you have this kind of mixed with the more peaceful melody. And it's almost like they kept going back and forth. And then eventually it's like the regal, or kind of like what I just called it, like the empire coming into like the townsfolk or whatever. It's like going back and forth, like, no, we're really good. Like, we're good for you. You want us. And townsfolk being like, I don't know, and stuff. And then there's this one piece in there around the 10-minute mark where I just put sarcasm, because it was like they kept playing that same kind of melody, but then they did it in a very like, and Bo, I know I'm all over the place. Bo Burnham kind of does this too, where like if he's playing the piano and then he plays it like, I don't care. He's still playing the right notes, but he's playing it in like a very like blah 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 blah. Like, so I took that as like the townspeople were just like, okay, yeah, we'll play like whatever. And then it just gets like super dark, and it's like the trumpeting people and like the more lighthearted but like kind of regal thing just turns like very, I don't know how else to say it, but like empire. I'm talking like imperial like just like, okay, we own you now type of thing. So I took that and I put, it's just very domineering, stops the charade, and it just kind of like fades out, and then it goes back into like being very quiet and timid and not as happy as the beginning, but it's like, I put like, my notes suck. I was like, hope, where it's just like, it's almost this kind of like underground, like, okay, well, we're going to just kind of be here and talking about stuff, but we can't like go against like the domineering thing. Right. And then I had like, it gets even sneakier. It's like, okay, it's being sneaky, it's being very tentative. And then suddenly it gets like really kind of really sad around like the 15-minute mark. And then it gets like, you can barely hear it. Like I had to turn everything all the way up because it was like very, very like tiny. And I think staccato in this point, but barely a whisper. And then while that's going on, it was kind of this weird thing where you have kind of like the theme of that kind of big like I don't think it was a tuba, but it was like kind of like a really bassy, like just in the background, almost like they were talking, and then all of a sudden, I don't know why I'm thinking they're in like a sewer, but it's like you have like these little like kind of like rebels in the sewer, and then you have this bass coming, and it sounds like they're like over top, and like I'm literally like just close my eyes just listening to this thing, just like storyboarding basically. So anyway, that all happened, and then it kind of like goes out, and I'm like sleepy. That was a little weird one, but that was like the part one empire. Then it goes into part two, and this was like a 5-minute or 6-minute one. Mm-hmm. And I put that as like townsfolk or like rebels, where it started out very, again, like regal and kind of immediately went into like this playful thing. So it was like I took it as these like young kids that are like, the empire sucks, we want to like basically just kind of like overthrow it or whatever, and they're like making fun of the empire and just like getting everyone riled up and whatnot. But then you have like a softer bit that is like almost like they're scared, and they're like, hey, be quiet, like don't piss people off, because then we're going to get kind of routed out and different things like that. And then it went to kind of like a middle ground where you have like I put like a voice of reason, where it's just like you have kind of like the super blatant and kind of like bombastic people, and you have the people that are just like, oh my gosh, like don't rock the boat type of thing. And you have kind of like that middle ground, which is around the 4-minute mark. And then I can't even read my writing here. It gets worse. So like at the very end of that one, it's basically like the young kids are like, screw it, we're gonna go anyway, and like it just gets really fired up, and that's how part 2 ends. Then it goes into part 3, which starts out very soft and like really sad, and I just called that one Mothers, because the way I viewed this is around the 2-minute mark. It's like the mother's like trying to like warn them, like, hey, like this is you're going off to like a war or a battle or something, and like you're not, thinking about the cost and whatnot, which then led into like dread of what will come. And then it gets a little happier, but in a really sad way. And I don't know if this was similar to kind of what was in part 1, where it was like they took the initial, like, I'm going to call it like the townsfolk theme, but then put it in like either a minor key or made it like sad. So I put just like remembering a different time. Then it went around the 4-minute mark, I put sad, but like it was like bad news was happening. So it was like a little bit faster paced and a little bit like, oh, what's happening? We're getting news back from like the battle, and it's just like people are dying, everything's going crazy. Gets really somber, which I put like funeral, or like, oh, this is what happens when you go against like the Empire. Around the 6-minute mark, it was like, okay, like what now? And I actually put perspective change, because I was like, we're like back in the sewer, and this is like the rest of the people that didn't get like destroyed as they like were defiant. So it's like you have the mothers, and they're like, oh, kids went off to war or something. And then you have the people in the sewers that are just like, hey, we're the survivors. Like, what are we doing? I told you we shouldn't have done this. And like, they're starting to kind of like, like doubt everything. And like, what do we do? Around the 8-minute mark, someone was kind of like a little bit upbeat, and it's starting to be like, hey, maybe we keep it going, still kind of sneaky. Sorry, is this boring? I feel like
this is great
here. But then it gets a little bit more foreboding around the 9-minute mark, where it's like it gets a little bit louder in the way that I thought that it was like there was like a smaller group, and then they start seeing like other survivors coming, and their group's growing a little bit. And then around the 10-minute mark, I feel like there's an argument happening. So at the 10-minute mark, there's doubt. And then you have somebody that's like kind of speaks up and tries to rally the group. And then there's kind of this back and forth where like one's a little bit more positive, one's a little bit more negative. Like, you guys are wasting your time. We shouldn't be doing this. And then, around between the 12 and 13-minute mark, this kind of music comes in. It's a little bit closer to like the Empire music, but I took it as somebody, which is always like the gruff guy that gets up and he's like, I'm hitting you with a hard truth. This is what's going on. And just is really, really blunt. And then it kind of deflates where like, like he's doing this, and then like all the music just kind of like dies out. And that's around like the 13-minute mark. Then you have a very, very quiet I put quiet spark, small voice, kind of coming at it with another angle. Again, I put like hope. And then more and more, like it gets louder and louder. Like people are like, oh wait, maybe he has a good idea, whatever. And then towards the end of that, everything like comes back together, but it's like, it's on the same level as part 2, where they're just like, let's stick it to the man, let's destroy everything. It's like, hey, we're going to do this, but we're doing it like for the right reasons, I guess, or they're going to do it because like they don't have a choice, is the way I took that.
Right.
End of part 2. Then, or at part 3.
Yep.
Part 4, I put just battle revolution, where it starts off really strong. Starts off, I don't know if major key is the right word, but like it starts off very like positive, and it feels just like the good guys song. But I was also kind of listening to it in a way of like, okay, they're challenging, they're making headway. Dune 2 popped in my mind for some reason, where it's like they're attacking and they're doing the things right. And it's like in a lot of movies where like the good guys are just crushing it, but like, something's got to happen, right? So good guys are crushing it. Somehow I was thinking about airplanes, because one, like around after the 1:30 mark, I didn't write this one. So between 1:30 and 4 minutes, there was this weird, like, I got a sense of like spiraling. So in my mind, it's like you have all these planes and stuff, and they're going in, and then like maybe like the main character, one of the main guys, gets like hit and he like spirals, and it's like, oh no, like what's happening? Like, can he recover? But then like it just like kind of goes silent, and he's like, oh, one of the big guys died, type of thing. And then around the 4-minute mark, I put the bad guy's turn. You get these like real big hits of bass and stuff. It's just like, yeah, it's like we're coming now. Like we're going to retaliate. Which then after every time you hear that, you hear like these very like timid music. And again, it's like we're questioning the outcome. Like, what are we doing? And around the 7-minute mark, which I think is whenever you got here, John, where it's like, okay, it's uplifting, but in a way of like, it felt determined where it's like, okay, like we might die, but you know, we're doing it for the right reasons. We're going to come out ahead, whatever. You know, whatever. It's just war. So then the Empire pushes. I put the Empire pushes back, which is like it's almost like a setup. So it's like you hear it's not like war drums, but it's just like you can imagine like, okay, like bad guys are setting up, good guys are setting up, and they're about to have this kind of like final battle. Pushback, intimidation, and then finally around the 10-minute mark, it was when like, okay, here's the conflict, and then that lasts for a minute. 11-minute mark, they overcome, they're triumphant, but for real. So it's like the regal music from the beginning is again, but it's not with weird notes. It's like, no, this is like we're good, and then the 12-minute mark at the end is like it gives a very kind of forever feel.
So you felt it ended positively?
I think so.
Okay.
Is that like a...
No, I just wanted to know. I'm just curious.
In my mind, that's how it all ran, where I'm like, I basically could storyboard that. And that's why I asked you, I'm like, did Disney make something for this? Like,
right.
It's like Fantasia-esque.
That's amazing,
like,
dude. That's such an incredible level of active listening and imagination that like... And there's, I don't hope you think there's like an answer for like, oh, this was actually blah, blah. It's like a lot more broad than that.
Yeah.
But that's an amazing exercise where you can really critically listen to that and you get that imagination and fascinating too.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to influence what Jeff says, but that's really cool, dude. And you shouldn't be embarrassed by any of that. That's like an amazing job you did there. Very detailed. Yeah.
Good. It was very good.
I'm glad you liked it. Awesome. Yeah. All right, Jeff.
I'll take a little bit of a different approach.
I love that
to this, just because I do have something similar to like Tyler's analysis.
Okay,
definitely a little bit off, but I think for the listeners and for anyone who,
I'll have this like in the notes too. So like I'll have like the Spotify link if anyone wants to listen to it. Like,
yeah, I think, and I remember John, you approached, I think maybe Tyler about this at maybe a D&D last year, and I think I invited myself into the fold of like, no.
I couldn't remember how it happened.
Of what are you listening to? Like, wait, what did you say?
Yeah.
And I think active listening is like such an appropriate phrase of what you can go through or a thought exercise when listening to something like this. So symphony was like not a new term for me. I know what a symphony is. I know what an orchestra is. I get that. But actually listen, I've never been to the symphony. I've never been to the orchestra. I've been to plays that had orchestra or like the pit. Mm-hmm. You know, like I'm so musically inept. I don't have this portfolio of instruments and of music. Like I struggled with Taylor Swift lyrics. I'm very bad at music. I love it, but I can't really explain to you what, you know, the behind the scenes are of like music in general. So whenever you approach Tyler with this, or you maybe mentioned it in passing, I'm like, I gotta listen to it. I gotta know what's going on here, especially having like an asset of you who does have that experience and knowledge of music in general. So this was my very first like symphony ever, like listening to it ever. And it was a very, I want to say like intimidating experience, but a welcomed experience. So one of the things I've been doing in the last couple of years, and I don't have a huge portfolio of it, but the record player, right? The record player has come back to certain people. It's like a hipster thing. Like you can make your jokes about the record player. I've heard it all from every one of my friends about the record player. People are coming over to my house. I'm putting on a record, and I don't care if I have to flip that fucker, 13 times. I'm flipping it because I think it is. Whenever you put on a record and you're listening to an album front to back, you're not going with a playlist. You're not hitting all the hits. You're trying to experience a front-to-back message or theme that an artist is trying to portray. And that is really what got me interested into this symphony, and kind of like you said, active listening, being more purposeful in thinking about what I'm hearing and what maybe an artist is trying to tell me. And I'm not going to go through all my thoughts on minute to minute. There were definitely moments of whimsy. There were moments that felt like very triumphant, and it felt that they were fighting. It felt like they were going back and forth. You might have 5 minutes of a wind instrument followed by a brass instrument, and I think somewhere in here at the 22-minute mark, or I don't know, somewhere in here around the halfway point, there's a violin harp solo, where these instruments just come in and they're like, I'm gonna slap you with the violin solo. And I'm like, yeah, you get them. There's just these really big moments of ups and downs, and it pulls you in. And I know Tyler mentioned a tuba moment, and I have at the 45-minute mark in caps, it says tuba is winning. That's my comment of my expert analysis of the symphony is tuba is winning.
That's the Empire. That's bad.
Yeah, well, but that's what I was going winning, through. Yeah. And it says tuba is winning, brass is winning, super high string and wind, triumphant, no longer a clash and understanding, euphoria, ? God damn those strings, boom, 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 end. That is my note. And it hit. If you are sitting down, not distracted by the dishes, not trying to chore, or not distracted by work, and you sit down for 45 minutes and you actively, if you maybe even close your eyes, do this at night. I think this would be a wonderful date night, like a quick date. If you have a significant other in your life, God bless you, you're special. Say hey babe or bro, I want to do something with you. I want to, sit down. Can we put this on and just listen to it together and see what we think? And I'll liken it to cigars. An ex of mine, we used to belong to a monthly cigar club, and that was an exercise that we would go through of smelling the cigar, tasting the cigar, and just discussing what we experienced through this handcrafted, albeit deadly item. But I think it's very healthy and mature to try and relate to something that isn't at the forefront hitting you and saying what you should be feeling while you're doing this. It's similar to how we play video games and we interpret it in different ways and we have different highs and different lows. This symphony definitely took you through highs and lows, right? And you could feel it through the bass, through the wind instruments, through just all the different shit. And there's no words, right? There's no lyrics. You have to put yourself in a different headspace to be able to enjoy. And that's what I think I came away, most with after listening to this is super out there. It's a deep take. I don't care. It's how I think. We live in a world where success in a lot of ways is measured by either how much you can endure doing something that you hate to make money, to buy the house, to buy the car, to say, I have accomplished this in my life. These individuals have sacrificed, I'm not going to say their entire life, but they have sacrificed a significant portion of their lives to perfect an instrument. When combined with another instrument, when combined with a conductor, form a whole that's telling an incredibly cryptic story, but it's such a fundamental base of the humanities, reading, writing. Well, reading and writing aren't really the humanities, but the arts. This is an art form. Music is an art form. And I did watch it. I listened to this probably 3 or 4 times back when we originally talked about it. I re-listened to it, watched the Pittsburgh Symphony perform it. And what I was watching were these individuals of all different ages in their lives coming together and saying, this is important to us. And whether the symphony had a story to tell or not, after reading the history, I kind of like could connect the pieces, but listening to it, I could not really, like, you had like the Empire and like, yeah, we won the battle and this. I couldn't quite make those connections. I was more along the lines of like the highs and the lows and the whimsy and the curiosity, the very vague emotions. And almost what I connected to more was the musician who said, this is important to me. I'm going to ensure that this art form is, withheld. I think it's something special, and I don't want to see it go away as far as technology goes. And I mean, that's my own like gripe against technology, and I have always loved the arts, but for me, I really connected with the what are they even called? The people that play the musicians. What are those people that play instruments called?
The people who do the stringy things.
So, but like I don't know if we're going to talk about the history of where this came from and what was going on when this crazy dude, Dmitri, what is it?
Shostakovich.
Shostakovich.
You have to say it like
Shostakovich. Yeah.
I can't do it.
Well, I mean, we're all pronouncing it fucking terribly because it's Russian, but yeah.
I just think that this is something that if you are listening to this podcast and you're interested in the humanities and art and music at all, this is a genre that I have to imagine is not listened to very much. I have to imagine that this is not a dying art form, but a very niche art form that I think you owe it to yourself to at least listen to and try to appreciate and connect with.
It's actually a great. I'm curious to see how many plays this has on. Not that Spotify's the end all be all, but
right.
I'm just curious.
No, it's a good metric. I love that take, and I think I really resonate with what you say. Sometimes it's about the conviction in which someone says something, and not necessarily the material in which they're spouting, right? And I feel like you felt that in this instance, where it's like, okay, maybe I don't understand the intricacies of what's going on as much as someone with more experience, but I can definitely recognize the passion in which this is being, transferred to me, right? And I can appreciate and respect that, which is awesome to see. I mean, that's an amazing part of it. And I think it gives validation to the craft as well. I think that works for anything though, right? Like you make a beautiful piece of pottery, and I don't know the first thing about how that works or how someone does that, but I could appreciate, wow, the effort it must have took to create these smooth edges and this beautiful shine or whatever the case may be, depending on what it is. That's something that's really important when it comes to art, any kind of art form. So that's awesome to hear that you had that mindset in it. And I do think you picked up on a lot of things as well. Like I think both of you are selling yourself short. I think you're great listeners. The fact that you even took the time and effort to approach this and sit down and really spend your time concentrating and listening and thinking about it. I did want to ask, we live in an age where I personally, just because of my experience, resonate more towards this kind of style, obviously without lyrics, because I think lyrics, while they're not bad and they can be incredible and have such meaning, obviously when language is introduced that we speak on a daily basis, it's easier to maybe identify a certain message that the artist is portraying, whereas this is much more cryptic and vague, as Jeff was saying. You really have to extract what you believe is the message and soul of what you're listening to. Compounded with the fact that this is much longer than what we're used to, right? We're used to listening to 4 or 5 minute songs. This is an hour.
If that. I think the average is like 3 minute 20 seconds or something like that.
Yeah,
like it's
right.
Crazy.
And this is not quite an hour, maybe 50 minutes, I think, is all 4 movements. That's an investment. And to me, and I'm curious how you guys feel about this, to me, the payoff, when you get to that finale, you get to that last part, the trumpets are blaring, the percussion is loud and rompous and it's exciting and it's there's this amazing euphoric moment. I spent 50 minutes to get here, right? It's like a long video game, or it's like a project that you've been working on. I personally feel there's much more gratification there, but I'm curious if you guys experience the same thing, or do you feel like you get tired after a certain point, or it's a lot of burden and concentration and you're exhausted?
No, I think long form media as a whole, I don't know if I have a tolerance for it, but I don't tend to feel that type of exhaustion in a lot of different forms. So I don't have much of an issue with, like, for instance, long movies or long video games can get a little bit bad, but we're talking about 150 hours and things like that. But for me, I did not feel like this was long at all. If anything, I felt like it was too short. I probably would have liked for it to go on for some reason. And this is me listening to it twice today. So I listened to it when I woke up, and I listened to it right before I came here. And, in addition to like the multiple times I listened to it last year, to me, it felt short. I don't really know why. Maybe it's valid, maybe it's not. But I'm also in the mindset of, we talk about music with lyrics, in the mindset of listening to the entire Dear Evan Hansen soundtrack and going through that story or listen. I go to plays and listening to Phantom of the Opera for the 30th time because I grew up with it. Things like that. So these long format mediums have been kind of like always in my life from a very young age. And even, I'm not going to relate it to going to art school, but when you go to art school, you are in the studio for a minimum of 3 years, or minimum of 3 years. You're in a studio class. One class is a minimum of 3 years. And then you're expected in that same day to put another 3 hours in outside of class. So you're looking at 3 to 6 hours spending on a project that is not completed. So I know, how do I relate this back to? The time did not feel wasted. It felt very purposeful. It felt like if there was a break in the symphony, if there was something that slowed down, it felt like that was the relief needed for the next build up, for the next
it was purposeful, like it was deliberate. Yeah.
And I think that if I can relate it to, again, back to art, if you're looking at a composition, it doesn't matter what picture, painting, photograph, it doesn't matter what you're looking at, there's always a balance of lights and darks, softs and harshes. And that's what makes a successful composition. And it was really interesting to see that from a musical perspective because this is longer. I thought it was like 45 to 50 minutes. It's somewhere around there.
Yeah, it's like 50.
You feel the balance. You feel the break. Like, oh, we just built you up. Let's bring it back down a little bit. Let's kind of like let you recover, and then we'll go back into it. So that was I like I said, I thought if anything it was too short.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd agree with that. I think that, and maybe it's a coping mechanism for something like that, where like in my mind, it was just playing out like a play, right? So you're talking about like the crescendo at the end and kind of like the kind of conclusion. It's like watching a movie, for me anyway, where it was like, okay, if I'm in a movie, like very rarely do movies have like a bad ending. Usually horror movies have a bad end, like it's some genres, but like generally speaking, there is a positive ending unless they're trying to like milk it for like a second like cliffhanger or something like that. Mm-hmm. So for something like this, I was kind of going through it all and whatnot. And the way that this was kind of playing out in my head, I needed to see how it ended, right? Like that was it, where it's just like, okay, like I think this is how it's going to be. And it was interesting because like at the beginning of like part 4 and I'm listening to stuff, it is in my mind very happy. In the back of my mind, I'm like, this feels like a movie when the good guys are stomping, and it's like, well, they can't just stomp the whole time, or it's like there's no kind of like, where's the climax here? So part of me is like, oh, maybe I completely misread this or whatever. And I mean, not that I wanted the main character to die, but like Then I heard that little spiral, like I can only call it a spiral thing. And then I heard like the kind of ominous things start popping up. And it's just like, it just fits so well of what I thought it was going to be. And like normally in a movie, it's like, oh, I saw that coming a mile away. But it's like, it was like gratifying almost, right? For it to be like, and I bet it's going to end like that. And it sure as heck does. And it exceeds expectations in terms of like the majesty of it. Right or wrong, you know, like it's just like, it worked for me. So like, yeah, it definitely wasn't a waste of time or anything like that for me. And I think that the fact that I associated a story to it kept me in it, where for things like when we were doing Game of the Year last year and talking through like the soundtracks and different things like that, that was a little tougher because it's like, all right, I gotta listen to all these soundtracks. I gotta try to be like critiquing it. And it wasn't, it was like I was just like churning through them. And while I enjoyed it, it wasn't like every song was telling me a story of blah, 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 blah. And I know it's different, but like that was more of a chore, or maybe it wasn't like hitting me the same way that like something like this did, where I'm like, okay, like we're sending an hour out. I know I'm listening to it. I'm going to start taking notes. So I don't know. Maybe if I did this with every single piece, it would be different. But this one specifically, I thought was phenomenal. It was really good.
Well, I think you have another element to that where, I mean, this is one of the greatest composers of all time.
Sure.
And symphonies are like, in the musical realm, this is your legacy, right? You have a handful. Like if you're one of the greatest composers who ever lived, you have a handful of symphonies. Like Beethoven's arguably the best. He has 9, which is a lot. Although Mozart has 1 million, but like you have a handful. They're very purposeful. A lot of them take years to develop. Like Mahler never finished his last one because he died before he could, because it's just like there's so much effort and thought put into it, right? But yeah, no, I'm really happy to hear that you guys liked it. This is one of my favorites. And I apologize to Jeff because I know you're very new to listening to these, and this is probably not the most beginner friendly. I wouldn't say it's the most like esoteric or anything. I think you can digest it, but definitely one I wouldn't recommend to a brand new listener to this art form. But nonetheless, I do appreciate you jumping in. So I'm just going to go over a little bit maybe of the history and stuff. And again, there's no right or wrong answer. Like whatever you feel, whatever your interpretation is when you're listening, that's correct in your mind. Like it's all about perspective, right? And that's the beauty of it too, where it's like you have 100 people listen to this. There's 100 different opinions. Maybe there's 200 opinions, right? Maybe you're not even sure what you feel, and it changes over time and evolves. And that's what gets me really excited. When I listen to this a million times and I find something new every time, or I feel differently about something because of my experience and what happens in my life or whatever, right? And it's a beautiful thing. So, little history lesson here. 1936, Shostakovich is premiering Lady Macbeth, which he wrote, right? And it was pretty successful at the time. And there was one critic who really did not enjoy it, thought it was a little bit convoluted, a little bit dissonant for his liking. Now, typically in the musical world, you know, this happens a lot. You know, it sucks if a critic doesn't like something. This critic had a little bit more pull than your average critic. So 1936 Russia, who do you think would be someone who, if they say something, you listen immediately?
Is that Stalin?
Yeah. Joseph Stalin really disliked this piece that Shostakovich came out with, right? So he was in trouble. Like he was really, like obviously, like you're in Soviet Russia, right? You're nervous if the big cheese doesn't like what you're doing. I mean, it was famous for artists to be taken away to the gulag for things that.
What didn't he like about it?
It was very dissonant. It wasn't. And by dissonance, I mean that like it's harder to digest because like they're notes that aren't as stable, aren't as like it's not like major like what we're used to, like stable chords, like triads.
Like it makes your.
It's like notes are very close together. It doesn't sound good, quote unquote, because it's like harsh. It's like uncomfortable, right? And that's a style that can work really well, but if you're very close-minded and an asshole, you might not like that very much.
Okay.
So anyways, he was in the middle of writing his 4th symphony. Not even writing, he was finished with his 4th symphony and they were rehearsing it. And he totally scrapped it because he was so afraid that Stalin would hate this. And this is when he started his work on the Fifth Symphony immediately. So I think it was a year later, actually. I think the turnaround time was very quick, especially for as symphonies go, that he premiered his Fifth Symphony. So he skipped over his fourth, and it was his Fifth Symphony. So it was very interesting. But just a couple of notes that I had for, the different movements. I'm not going to go as in depth as Tyler, but, the first movement, lost my place. Sorry. Very dark, right? Which I think you said yourself, right? Very dark. It starts off on a minor sixth. So it's not happy, right? So this interval is 1 half step above a major fifth, which is like the pinnacle of stability, which is what Western music is completely built off of. You're like one little step above that, so something's a little bit off, and it's dark, and there's something wrong with it, right? So it's a very striking beginning to, like, the strings start on that interval, which I think is very striking. So it's very dark. There's a lot of trauma. It's very brutal, right? And in the first movement, a lot of people feel like this is a depiction of Stalin himself and the regime itself. So you're talking about the empire, which I think is spot on. There's this like militaristic section at like the 10-minute mark where the snare drum comes in and it's very metered and the pace is set and it's like in line, like perfection. But if you listen to the trumpet melody, it's just a little bit off. There's something wrong with this, right? It's not right. So I think it's that kind of depiction. Second movement, I think you were right on this. So it's kind of brittle. It's a waltz, so it's in 3/4. So it's a dance-like, actually. What? And yeah. So it's actually a parody. So you talked about this a little bit in yours, like sarcasm. So this movement is kind of sarcastic, kind of playful, and it's a parody of a Vienna waltz. Again, it's like this kind of overlying theme of like there's just something off about, like, you have the main structure of what a symphony quote unquote should be, of how it has been, and he kind of just twists that idea a little bit, like, oh, this is how a society should be, but there's like a dark secret, there's something off to it, there's something uncomfortable about it. So that's the second movement. Third movement's like the very emotional, devastating, bleak movement. I personally always feel that this is the outcrying of the Russian people themselves. This is their true emotional feelings about the situation that they're in. I always tear up at this movement, especially at the climax of this movement. It's just when the strings are at their high climax point. It's just very emotional to me because I hear outcries when I listen to this. I hear like just a history of oppression and devastation. But at the end of it, there is this hopeful kind of idea that's introduced. It ends major. It ends on like maybe like a potential of what it could be. Like there's potential here. Like this could be great, maybe one day, which I think is really interesting.
Which I did have technically. Like
yes,
it comes through.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. And then the fourth movement, it's violent. It's very climatic, obviously. And this is the very interesting movement. So I was interested in hearing your thoughts on this, how you thought. So on a listen to this, it sounds positive. It's in D major. So it starts in minor, it goes to D major, which is a very bright key, a very happy key, right? This would be your traditional end of a movie, happy, everyone's high-fiving, whatever. We won. But the thing about this movement is, and what's very interesting about this is the tempo. It's very slow. So typically in your finale of a symphony, it's quick. It's a quick meter. The tempo is quick, I should say. And it's major. It's exciting to the end. It usually sometimes gets faster all the way to the end, and it just kind of flies. This one is like very slow and metered and held back almost. It's kind of on the back foot of the beat, which is totally not what you expect, and it's very interesting. So people call this like the hidden secret message of the symphony itself. So it's eighth note equals 184, right? Which is what the tempo is set at, and people thought for the longest time that was a mistake. They thought it should have been twice as fast as that. They thought it should have been quarter note 184, and some people played it that way. But the reasoning or the rationale behind this, a lot of people believe, is it's supposed to symbolize a forced happiness, a forced excitement, like under the threat of someone else, like a triumph that isn't real, it's artificial. And there's a lot of different, people who talk about that. There's like a memoir. So someone wrote what he claims is a memoir of Shostakovich. And I just want to read a little bit. I don't think this is an exact quote, but it's pretty much. So I think it's clear to everyone what happens in the fifth. The rejoicing forced to create under a threat. It is like someone is beating you with a stick saying, your business is rejoicing. Your business is rejoicing. And you rise, shaking, and go off muttering, our business is rejoicing. Our business is rejoicing. So,
well, damn.
So it's interesting. But that was the beauty of this, because Stalin is there to see this. So he has to disguise this message without tipping it off to anyone that like this is a slight against the regime. This is a criticism of the regime. So it's really fascinating in that regard that he's trying to tell a message while disguising it as another message, which again, it's not anything fault with you, but something else that was interesting. There was a Romanian conductor who sent a letter to Dmitri Shostakovich, and he asked, is the tempo at the end of the fifth correct? And several months later, he received a postcard unsigned from Moscow with one word on it, and it said correct. And
that kind of gave me shivers.
Yeah. And this man lived in fear. Like, he literally, you got to put yourself in that position. If anyone found out about it, or the secret message, or even thought that that's what he was trying to do, he would be killed. And there was a story about how he would pack his bags in the front of his house so that if the secret police came, he didn't want to wake his kids up, and he would just go. And it's chilling. Like, I think exactly. So when I listen to this, I hear the beauty of this kind of music and other art forms is that you feel connected to a history that it's conveying. And this one really, in my mind, does a great job of sharing that Russian history and putting myself in their shoes of the fear and the brutality and the despair that there was. So it's very powerful. It's very good. Again, there's no right or wrong answers. I think what you say is completely understandable. I mean, it's in a major key. It's triumphant. I think some of those other context clues, like when you listen to more symphonies, right? Like if you listen to Tchaikovsky, for example, his finales will be the same, but they'll be quick, they'll be fast, they'll be bright, exciting. And so when you have more of that perspective, you're like, wait a minute, there's something off about this one, right? So yeah. I don't fault anyone for that. And I think it's interesting to talk about, but that's just a little bit of context. I mean, you can go much more into it, but I just wanted like a surface level. But at the end of the day, I'm glad you guys listened to it. I appreciate that. This is one of my favorites. I've gotten the opportunity to play this several times, which is really, sometimes you listen to something and it's like you really like it, but playing it's really boring because I play trombone. This has an amazing trombone part, obviously, that you heard. So this is a really special piece for me as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm super envious that you got to connect, in a real life way to this piece. That's like I'm envious of that feeling. You know what I mean? That's something that I think as a human we're always searching for. Maybe not necessarily a purpose. I mean, I think we all are looking for a purpose, but whenever a passion can elevate to that level, I think it's something really special. And I think something that's super interesting is how this cements itself in history. And I think of the modern day, and again, I know I sound ridiculous. I'm a super novice when it comes to music. I can't dance, I can't sing, I cannot play an instrument. I suck at all things music. But it makes me think of all those responses to 9/11 that musicians had. So like Green Day's response to 9/11, My Chemical Romance, The Black Parade, a response to 9/11. And when those albums came out, I had no clue that they were a response to this event. And I just thought they were music. And I thought that for a very, very long time. And again, they are music, but we rarely connect a musician's work to a real life event unless it's like the Kendrick Lamar Drake beef or like Taylor Swift going through a breakup. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like we rarely make that connection. We usually relate it to something in our own lives or like, hey, this song really pumps me up, like it's Queen or whatever. But whenever you take a step back and realize, yeah, each one of these artists is a person in and of themselves going through something in time, and this actually might, you know, be connected to an event that we all experienced, it kind of comes full circle. And this connected me to Russia in ways I never knew, like, I don't want to say I never knew possible, but it definitely put me there. It definitely put me in the public's perspective, something that I have never really thought about. And I'm serious, like in my head, I'm like, why isn't this in history classes in schools? Like, why are we not using this as more of a collaboration in public schools or whatever to bridge that gap of society and art and history? It's kind of perplexing to me. And maybe it's because it's, you know, I can only imagine taking this to maybe a younger person. Maybe they're ready for it. I don't know. I don't want to underestimate high schoolers or even college students because they're capable of fantastic things. But again, I don't know how this would have hit with like 18-year-old Jeff, right? I probably would have been like, okay, like dope. Like.
but using music, using as like sculptures, art, like painting, whatever. Like the problem is, I think with schools is it's like, okay, Stalin did this in your history book, and then you had like a completely different, like everything that he did or the conditions of, you know, Russia, it you know, that period in history is completely divorced from whatever you learn in like art class or something like that. There isn't that combined thing of like, okay, well, like while he was doing this, here's where that music came in, and like trying to like link those together, I think would be a fantastic way of trying to maybe have people like have it resonate a little bit more. Like it's one thing to read something on a page or whatever, and history books are obviously like typically watered down and things like that. You're not reading like a biography of Stalin, but I think it would benefit for sure, even if you're not like picking up on all the music stuff, how you should. I think that it's one of those things like it can give, I mean, it sounds really bad. It can give a soundtrack to the history book, like bare minimum, right? So like when you know, you're in the third part and it's like just like really soft and kind of weepy and just like you know, like you said, you were crying, like it's like it gives you like a heartache. That alone can at least be like, okay, hey, play this while we're talking about like, you know, him going through and brutalizing whatever, you know, like, I don't know. I think that could benefit people, but like a lot of people don't know, or a lot of people, you know, like everyone's so siloed in their own like kind of curriculum or own thing that you miss the humanity is the right word for that, on like what people were doing at that time. I mean, so I was looking, Tchaikovsky, is that?
Tchaikovsky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His Jazz 2 song or whatever piece that has 55 million on Spotify. This is by far his number one. He's averaging around like 12 million. Taylor Swift has like
billions,
265 million per song.
Oh.
So it's
not
it's tough.
Where not
it's
as
like,
popular.
It's not, but like one is literally like, I'm fearful of my life and I'm doing this anyway. Where it's like with Taylor Swift, it's different time. I get that.
It's different
like,
time. I think it's much more complex to listen to 50-minute
sure
symphony. There's 0 words. There's all these instruments you've never played in your life, right? Whereas Taylor Swift, it's like 3.5 minutes. She's talking about a breakup. I've been through a breakup. I can relate.
Yeah.
I can sing the lyrics with her. And it's not bad. I'm not trying to put down another. It's just a different form. It's a different genre. And that's the beauty of it too. There's something for everybody. But I do wish more people would just give it a try. It's a lot more involved than just being in your shower, singing along or whatever. But I think the reward can be great. You get out what you put into it, I think, is something that I've learned throughout my life and whatever endeavor I'm trying to do. So, yeah, like you said, it's an amazing way to connect to the past. I mean, this was almost 100 years ago, and I never met this guy, right? I've never been to Russia, but I feel like not even that I can't fully understand it. Obviously, I've never been in that situation, but I get a piece of that, just a little scrap of that to connect to someone who's dead and to a place I've never been. And that's, like you said, that's humanity to me. If there could be more of that, I think maybe there could be more understanding or more, at least put us in that headspace of like some extra empathy versus just, Yep. So yeah, it really provides the emotion behind, like you said. I really thought your example with like history books and stuff, it's like there's no emotion in history books. There's just words on a page. Right. Whereas although words on a page can be emotional, if you have like poems and stories, and to talk about Russian novels, I mean, those are some of the greatest literature ever written, right? Russian people are really good at art. Really good at art.
You just don't connect the dots. That's the thing. Is like sometimes, especially kids, like they're not going to do that on their own volition. Like you give them a little.
It's like getting into League, dude. It's very intimidating. It's not easy, but once you're into it, it's like the reward is great.
I forgot League has something for every facet of life. That makes sense.
It does. Did you listen to that when I was talking about that? Did you like my analogy? I forget what I said. I think I was talking about going on a date or something.
Something like that. Yeah.
Early game. Gang.
Anyways, I know we're running late.
Ganked a lot. Yeah.
I get ganked.
So selfishly, and we don't have to go super long. I know whenever we talk about D&D, it gets long. I need notes as a DM. I obviously need to get better. Got my feet wet for the first campaign in quite some time. So I need like what works, what doesn't work, what do we need to tweak.
You want to step up first, Jeff, or I can share a few thoughts.
Yeah, as a I can only tell you what I can't really make like a DM note. Like I'll just tell you what I experienced in our first session, which I thought went pretty well. If anything, when I was driving home, I was disappointed in my own. Let me just get there. The things that I am really liking so far, one session in, is the setting. I think what is really appealing to the setting is how limited it is. I love that it's like we're in ice for the listeners. We're in Icewind Dale, very northern part of Faerun, and it's very difficult to leave. For instance, it's a northern. Think of it like Alaska, always dark. There's 10 towns, and the campaign is basically limited to. I mean, I don't personally know this because I don't have the book, but the way that you staged it is like this is where we are going to be, and I really like that. I think in a lot of the other actually every other campaign I played, it feels so big that it's almost like difficult to comprehend. But as soon as you shrink that down into, you're just in Alaska. There's like 10 towns. Like some of the people like really suck. It's tough here. Like that really helped me to believe it. Okay. And the one thing that I struggled the most with was definitely finding my characters. So we all made characters and we had to somehow get them there, right? And I think that is definitely what I struggled with the most. And then like even like Monday night, Dwayne was texting me like, there's no women, right? I was like, wait, are we going to be women? He's like, yeah, we're going to be women. I'm like, fuck. So now I'm like, thanks, Dwayne. But I did find it very difficult to get this character that I wrote to Icewind Dale and get them like tonally there. And whenever we began the campaign, and then as soon as Nate started with like the jovial goblin, I found that I, against my own will, adopted that tone because I was not planted. I didn't have my feet planted firmly in my character, and all of a sudden my character has taken over me and is doing things that I did not like want. And it's not Nate's fault. Nate was doing a great job. But because I did not prepare my character well enough, found that I adopted his tone and it got away from me. So that was something that happened with me. And at one point he looked, this is another Nate thing, and Nate, fuck you. He looked me.
So before, it's not Nate's fault.
This dude, he looked me in the eyes. And spouted these words: skin lizards to the south. And he looked me dead in the eyes and said, skin lizards to the south.
I still don't understand that. I don't know what that is.
I thought it was a dick joke. I thought that's what it was. And
I don't know. I thought he was talking about Dragonborn or something.
Really?
I don't know. You got it better than me. You were laughing.
We looked at each other, and it was literally...
He was laughing. So
it was literally like one of those YouTube sketches where a bunch of people are at a desk in the library, and somebody will say a word, and you have to do everything you can not to bust out laughing in the library. That's what it felt like, but I failed, and I was literally had tears coming down my eyes.
It was some anime thing or something.
I would have got it then. If that was
fair. Yeah.
So sadly,
I didn't get it.
And just to keep things short, that's really the gist of it. I feel like the setting is boom, like spot on. I had difficulty getting my character to Icewind Dale and adopting that darker tone, and
I think in general, the dark tone maybe isn't quite there just yet. And I think that's okay. And like, that's something that like I need to adapt, because it was like, okay, let's just be a serious campaign. It's gonna be a brutal campaign. And then we have like two goblins pretending they're dwarves, and we have a like, you were like, sweet release of death type of character.
Yeah.
And it's like, in a way that's actually very dark. It's just depending on how we handle it. So I don't think it's bad.
And I guess, like, I think we all have, like, man, this is this grand idea that we want to find a way to subtly drip feed to the party in a meaningful way. Incredibly difficult to do. So, like, the seriousness of my character, I hope someday comes out, because it's written down on a piece of paper. I know it's there. I have it prepared. But it is like one of those situations of like, it's difficult to convey, like, we're not actors. We're not paid voice actors. We're not writers. We're just a group of guys getting together and giving this our best go. And it is incredibly difficult for anyone who's played D&D to convey what they have in their head of their character and act that out in a drip feed manner to the rest of the table in a meaningful way. So I just think it's overall difficult in general, but the setting's working for me.
I mean, it's the same thing where it's like, and this is always my number one complaint, and why I don't typically do like extensive backstories, is because I find that if I do that, the character that I have in my head, it might not jive with the party, or it might not, like you're saying, like the moment Nate opens his mouth, you're changing the persona, or you're changing how you act to match a certain energy or something like that. So like, I completely get it. And that's why on one hand, I get where you guys are coming from, where it's like, okay, like we need to have a bond. We need to have like some sort of like reason on these things. And on one hand, it's supposed to be like, it like opens you to like, okay, now let's go into the campaign. But on the other hand, it's like, in some ways that could limit, because I don't want you guys to be so focused on like, well, we have to do it this way because this is what bonds us, if like the campaign will naturally evolve your character and naturally evolve you. So like, that's the thing I want to get across people is like, and I think I said this at the very beginning, like, you are not, I know you just said that you were, but you're not slaves to your characters. Like, you, at the end of the day, you own them. You can kind of morph them or mold them to something that kind of works. I don't know if you looked at the notes that I put on the chat, because I just kind of redid the, okay, hey, here's everything that happened in the campaign. And even then, like, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to, I don't want to call it retconning, because they're just like little small tweaks and things like that. But like I was telling John at a certain point, like, most of that campaign like wasn't in the book. Like, a lot of that stuff was like, okay, like we're trying things, we're trying to figure out stuff and whatnot. So like, how the dwarf in the tavern was originally the bounty hunter, because like, okay, like he was supposed to, it's a whole thing. Like Helen was supposed to actually be him, and he was, so it's like, he just never existed. We were just, okay, we'll put him in here and we'll tweak some things around. But then even in the notes, it's like, let's make him a mercenary. So like, next session, I'm going to say like, hey, if we could just suspend disbelief for 1 second, he's a mercenary. I'm just like kind of cleaning things up. Not that it's going to be like, oh, we're going to completely rewrite the story or rewrite the thing, but like I could see where I was not being clear enough and failing in that regard. So like I wanted to like use that as like hey, here's a mulligan, if you will, of like, okay, like here's what happened. Now we're starting in this place. So like you guys ended where you're like running down the street. At the start of the next session, it's going to be like, okay, you made it here. Like I don't need to like,
right.
How did you get there? How did you know? Like we don't need that. Like at some point, it's like you know, John knows where we're going. He led you, and I kind of wrote that down where it's like, I think kind of not. It doesn't always have to be like tied up and things like that, but like I feel like the notes can kind of do a good job of like, here's what you need to know, here's the summary, and then move on. But I would say like, check the notes and then make sure to hold me accountable. But
no,
what about you, buddy?
Yeah, no, I agree a lot with what Jeff said. The setting's great. I thought you did a great job of providing the tone. I think the soundtrack really helped for me personally. I liked the sound effects and the harshness of the music that was kind of going on, or the sounds that were being portrayed as we were walking down the street.
Those are the only 3 tracks I have, so we're gonna see how quickly those get old. I'll figure something out.
When I'm DMing personally, one of my favorite parts is creative. So like I'm DMing a group of my friends and we're doing another book, Out of the Abyss, that I've talked about, and I have a whole playlist of like 40 songs and just sound effects and stuff that I'm interweaving. So I was actually doing that today for our next session because we're getting to a very big city where I have some songs, some from God of War. I have some other tracks. So that's really cool. So I think you did a great job with that. And I would encourage you to, if you find the inspiration, to find those things, because I think it could be really rewarding, even if it's in a subtle way. I really liked your NPCs actually. So the Helen, which we met, which was like what is she, like just an adventurer or something or whatever?
Maybe we don't know. Bounty hunter. She's the bounty hunter.
She's the bounty hunter. She was really cool. I personally have a hard time with doing like cool people. I'm really good at like silly people for some reason. I thought like you were really quick on your responses of like I think Jeff was talking to you and he was giving you some really silly stuff. And like if that was me, I would break and be like, I don't know what to say. But I think you did a really good job of like staying in character and like a suitable response to that. That I thought I really liked that dynamic and could see that playing out in like a movie or like video game or something. It was like really funny. I think. So I agree with Jeff. This is more of a personal thing and not really you, but I don't know if this helps.
Pussies. Like both of you.
Well,
Pussies?
No, I'll get to the negatives. I think
I'll tear you apart in a second. All right.
I'm trying to find my character too. I think that's just like a session 1 kind of thing. I'm really trying to feel it out. Like the voice is important, and I'm trying to find that, and then like just how I'm being portrayed. I feel like for my character personally, man, do I have I need like some kind of defining character trait or like flaw or something I need to interweave into this, because I feel like I'm really boring right now and I don't really have that. So I'm like trying to figure that out, and then I'm trying to figure out how I ingratiate myself with the party. I think learning that 2 of my party mates are actually goblins is going to be a really big reveal, and I think that could be like kind of pivotal. Not in a negative way, but in like we have to get over this hurdle, and this is like going to be like a really big potential bonding moment, because if I can get over that, it's like a big step, because that's really strange, and why are there goblins here and things like that. So that's interesting. So yeah, there's just like a lot of that, but again, it's like a session 1 thing, and I don't think that's out of like what's common, and I don't think you should worry about it. In terms of other things, I don't know if this is just a me thing, but like when we're investigating something, or we're like trying to figure something out, we're talking amongst ourselves. Sometimes I felt like there wasn't a lot of direction in what was going on. So we were in this house and we were like, it was a murder scene, and we're like looking, we're like making rolls and doing things. And Tyler is giving us information and background. And I know that you were giving me some context as to like, well, I'm trying to drip feed things and this and that. So maybe it's a me thing where I just need to like not think everything means something right here, right now. But that's kind of where my brain was. And I think it's a very common D&D player kind of trope where it's like, he told me this must mean something. I got to follow this thread. Yeah. And it's like, you gave us a lot because they didn't all necessarily mean something right then and there, or if at all, which is like a good story. So I think maybe I have to make that adjustment, but I do feel lost sometimes. So for example, to put a specific example, we were pretty much coming through the house, and then you were like, what's your next move? And so that can be a tough question sometimes for a player, because it's like, well, do you mean like anything? Can we just go to a different town? Like you really wouldn't want us doing that. So like, what about the temple? Or so I think what you did was, I think the NPC said something like, well, do you guys have any places to go? So I think that's a better method personally of like, as a DM, use your characters to elicit a reaction from the party.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, what do you guys want to do? Have the character say, well, where should we go next? Do you guys have a place to go? How do you feel about this piece of, like, if there's something you want us to focus on? Well, this was a really interesting note. How do you guys feel about that? Right.
Yeah.
That's just my kind of 2 cents about that. I don't want it to be linear, obviously, but just a tiny bit more of a nudge. Maybe that's just a me thing. Maybe I'm just dumb. But I was struggling with that a little bit.
The problem was that whole section, and I'm not going to be doing this consistently, because like the one thing I hate is like, well, here's the 12 things that you could have done in different things, but like it's kind of like a peek behind the curtain. It's like that whole scenario. So from the dwarf in the tavern to literally going to the shop and investigating the murder, like the mission isn't a murder investigation. Like the book is like, this bounty hunter comes up and says, hey, it's this guy or gal, go kill him. And like literally that's it, right?
Yeah.
And
the same way.
Yeah, and like the more I'm looking at it, the more I'm like, dude, what if it was this thing and this, and you're going on these like these Reddit posts and like, how are other people running this? And they're just like, yeah, this is like kind of like, most people just skip those completely. So the book says, hey, pick one of these things. There's like a combat focused one and kind of like a weird like go adventure one that just gets people in the mood, like understand like what D&D is.
Right.
And most people just skip them completely. So we're actually doing both. And I'm trying to like weave them together and kind of figure something out. But then the main thing is like everything that you guys were finding and looking at and doing different things, that's all basically just tied into like much later, right? So it's like I'm trying to drip feed, but then the problem that I ran specifically in session 0, and again, that's more on me, and I always forget this whenever I DM, that like people go very, very slow, right? So for me, I'm terrified. It's like there are 10 towns. That means I have to worry about 10 towns of just NPCs and just all this stuff. So like I was focused on the weeks leading up of just like trying to memorize just like so much information about such a broad thing, where I ended up like, and you know how like you're cramming for something for like school, right? Like you memorize like 7 pieces of information before you start forgetting stuff. So it's like I knew little bits of a lot of stuff versus like, hey, I have a really good understanding of like this shop or something like that. But it was good because like playing with you guys and kind of seeing how you interact and seeing how everything was, now it's like, okay, I can guide you. It's not going to be railroad and not going to be like kind of like you have to go here, but at least I can be like, okay, well, rather than these 10 towns, you're going to go like one of these 3 or one of these. And if you decide, oh, I'm going to go in the opposite direction, all right, I'm just going to lift this stuff and put it over here. It just, I get worried about like if I change up too much stuff, can I keep all of that straight? Which is just me taking better notes. But, yeah, no, I hear you. I think I'm very excited for session 2 because I think I have a very good understanding of where I want you guys to go and what to do and stuff like that, and kind of like throw some surprises in there and whatnot. But I think that it's going to be a little bit more focused. At least that's what I'm going to try to do. So we'll see. Till Nate yells a goblin fight or something crazy or something like that. But like that's the cool thing, right? Like the main thing is I just want you guys to have fun and I want you guys to kind of do what you want to do. So like the thing that I was worried about like leaving is exactly what you said with like the interaction. Like you were giving me this interaction or trying to like kind of bond with me is a thing. I'm like, well, crap, this is a cold character. Like how does it work? And I don't want it to feel like you're just like I'm basically throwing all your role playing back in your face. So I hope it didn't come across that way. It's like I want to like if Dayton, Dwayne want to break into a house and like hold a girl like a little girl hostage or whatever, like, whatever it is, like that's fine. Do what you want to do, but it's not going to like necessarily like impact the overarching like battle that's happening or something like that. So I don't know. It was good. I enjoyed it. I actually, like in writing the notes, I'm like, we actually, he did some stuff. Like it's not like it was kind of too crazy, but
those first couple sessions are always going to be feeling the party out.
Yeah,
getting used to each other. I mean, the same thing happened in my game where I thought I wasn't doing a good job because it was like very trepidatious of my party. They, walking on eggshells and they're like trying to find their voice and everything like that. And I'm like, shit, like this isn't fun. But that's just how it goes sometimes. And then it's just volume. Like you get to session 5 and it's like, wow, look how far we've come. We're actually starting to develop some things. The backstory is starting to play a part in the story itself.
You get a little bit more focused because they want to see how like something turns out and stuff.
And from a DM perspective, you get to see what they're interested in, which is important to me. So like in the perspective of running a book, I've learned personally, just for me, the best stuff we do is not in the book. The book for me is just a skeleton of here's what the main idea of the story is, and I'll try to hit the main beats. But if we go in a different direction, I'm not afraid to change things. I'm not afraid. Like the best stuff is when it's personalized the way you do. Like if I can put something in the game from Jeff's backstory on page 3, like a name drop, players love that. When there's a name drop from their backstory, they know I read that, right? And they get really excited, and then they pull on that thread, and I tie them into what the book is saying. So instead of this character doing X thing, it's their NPC from their backstory doing X thing, and you just make those connections and make it personal. That's when it gets really fun, in my opinion. But we'll get there. I just think it takes time.
Yeah,
so I'm not worried about it all. Yeah.
I mean, how do you guys feel about the combat? Like, I know it's a little bit more loosey-goosey with some of that stuff. I'm trying to be a little bit more like, hey, be creative and let's see where it goes type of thing.
Yeah.
But I know that's like also a kind of, it's a balance because I don't want it to be like anything can happen. Like it's like, oh, he has unlimited hit point. Let's just see. So I think that's something that we're going to have to play with. But it didn't seem like anyone was like super, like didn't like it, I guess. Overall, I mean, you got kicked in the face, Jeff. But other than that, I guess
I think I was grabbing a beer when that happened. So, but I do know I got kicked in the face. No, I think with that type of combat and the looseness of it, it very quickly highlights the people that want the numbers, they want the hits, they want the damage, they want the the big crits and the abilities, and that's a very valid way of playing. I'm not dismaying that. It also shows the people that kind of like Thok, and like when you were playing our last campaign, for some people the combat is like either a low point of D&D as a whole, or it's just another vehicle to role play an event. So like I thought that it did a pretty good job of appealing to both parties, where you have the people, they can take their big turn, they can swing as hard as they can, and then if somebody else wants to approach combat in a different way, where like you said, Nate and Dwayne kind of retreated, and I thought that did such a good job of telling a combat story that you normally wouldn't get in a like move here, because it gave Nate and Dwayne the freedom to kind of, in a way, leave combat and then rejoin combat in a meaningful way, or to have stuff happening while the big hitters are like fending them off. So I thought that it lended surprisingly well to both play styles, which I'll be interested to see like what the next encounter looks like, because that was kind of, like you said, it was very loose. Like we were doing rolls and things like that, but it was very different than the mechanical, like,
it is your turn now. What are you doing? Okay, now it is your turn. Now what are you doing?
I thought it was nice, and I didn't mind it at all. I will just say, don't accidentally skip one of those people that really like combat's turns, because I can imagine them being like, fuck, where's my turn? Like, you know what I mean? Because that's so like impactful for them. So as long as they make sure that they get their turn, I think
maybe keep a tally of like, okay.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is like everyone always will get a turn, so I think the thing that stood out to me is immediately everyone took to a role and you learned a lot of, so like Nate and Dwayne kind of retreated and ran into a house and did these things and were acting a little goofy, but like that was very in character. And when I think of Perez, like your character, like it was like, okay, you're hanging back, maybe you aren't in a lot of combat, but like you can still contribute, but you're doing it like from the back lines, right? Like you're helping, but it's like you're not maybe going to run into this like big brute of a dwarf face or something like that, right? And then Jeff, like you're like, hey, I really want to help you or whatever. And again, I feel so bad because like that's all you want to do with my one NPC, and she was like just giving you the cold shoulder, and this guy just kicks you in the face, and it's just like no. Normally I'd be all for it. And
that was also because I didn't have abilities put in.
Yeah, well, that's fair too. And you still have to go onto the campaign so I can actually see your character. But then you have like John, who really likes. I think he put combat as like his number one thing. So he was like, okay, like, is he hurt? I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, do an insight check. Like, figure it out. Like, so I didn't just have like, I'll let you know when he's gonna die. And I think that was actually for the best because it really played out well in this. And I always love how the dice just kind of naturally make things work somehow, like every time. And then, yeah, I think with Ryan kind of fighting and everything, and he was the one that's like, all right, I'm going to run and smack him in his face. And it's like, cool. And then like they're locked in like, I would say they're in like this one-on-one combat while other people were kind of just doing things around them. So it seemed like you could tell the character of each of those characters, like the way that they would handle a situation. And I think it was story building in a good way. So I was very proud of how everyone handled that. Like I didn't want it to be too jarring, but yeah, cool.
Cool.
All right. Well, like I said, pussies, that's fine. I'm just setting.
I give you a critique.
Setting. Check.
All right. Well, I guess if it's not even a critique, the only advice I have, and this is coming from somebody who only DM'd 1.5 times, fuck them all. Fuck all the players. If they have like, I'm crying, fuck them. Treat them like a little kid. Like, no, you understand we're playing this game. I'm not dealing with your little crybaby. No.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
That would be my only word of advice, is to talk down to the players if they come to you with like a personal, like, seriously, like, we're all in this to have fun, and a lot of people have opinions that are valid, and I hate to say it, like, some people have opinions that are kind of more towards their like own not agenda, but
in favor of
this
them.
Is D&D is such a difficult game in and of itself to have run smoothly. It is so hard, and everyone's experienced that. So I would just say, like, don't take. I would just say treat us like we're infants and run the campaign how you want to run the campaign. That is my personal advice.
Well, good advice.
Don't listen to anything I say is my advice.
Sure. I'm actually excited. Like I think I'm very excited for next session because I think it's going to be targeted, and I'll be pretty like, it's one of the, I know we're running, like, it's one of those things where the idea that I can focus on like 3 NPCs, so it's almost like a tiered thing of like, you're probably going to talk to these 3 people. I got to get their voices down, their personalities down, exactly like all the stuff that they could possibly say to you. Like, that's the kind of stuff. So I can focus on 3 versus 5 times 10 pounds or whatever like that. So I think just that alone is a weight off my shoulders where I can really kind of make a small thing really good versus like a large thing like mediocre, if that makes sense.
100%.
But, yeah. All right. Cool. Well, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, that's all we got. Appreciate you for being here, Jeff. As always, did you want to plug your Twitch or?
Yeah, What Killed Jeff at twitch.tv. Is that even how it goes? Twitch.tv/WhatKilledJeff. There we go. Playing Animal. Oh, not Animal. I almost read anime bullshit. Playing Animal well right now. I don't know if I'll be playing it Monday. But tune in to find out.
You are playing it right now?
I'm playing it right now.
Give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. You can only pick one.
Critically thumbs up. Personally thumbs down.
Okay.
Interesting. So we will get more thoughts with that. But yeah, check Jeff out. It's always a good time. But if you made it this far, we really appreciate it. Check out us on couchcompany.games. All of our stuff is there. We'll put Jeff's score of Stellar Blade up. Number 2 this year so far. Huge game. And we're going to be here same time, same place next week. Thanks for joining us on the couch. Peace.